Chapter 503 Chapter 503 Junior Brother Han's Exceptionally Unique Perspective. Chapter 503 Junior Brother Han's Exceptionally Unique Perspective. In front of the spirit herb garden, Jiang Hao could sense that Han Ming's cultivation had improved. He never stopped improving himself. It was all because of his talent and hard work. He utilized both opportunities and potential to the best of his ability. In the entire cliff of broken hearts, there were only a few people who could match him. He had matured a lot. He still clung to luck a lot, but that was just a small flaw. It didn't affect him much. As for who junior brother Han would bring back, he didn't really care. It wasn't very likely that he would bring back a dragon, after all. They were rare. However, since Han Ming's sect mission had arrived, his own mission might also be coming soon. Sure enough, 3 days later, he received a sect mission. Surprisingly, this time the mission was once again related to the Sea Fog Cave. Why is it the Sea Fog Cave again? Jiang Hao felt a headache coming on. After asking the senior at the task hall, he got the answer. It wasn't originally yours. Last time, it was fine for a Foundation Establishment Realm Cultivator to lead the team. But now, the Sea Fog Cave has become a lot more dangerous, so we need a Golden Core Realm Cultivator to lead the group. Since you advanced to the Golden Core Realm recently, the mission was assigned to you. He was speechless. If possible, he wanted to bribe with some spirit stones and request a mission change. But sect missions were not something that could be modified or changed. Only a few individuals had that authority. Sect missions could be exchanged with others, but they couldn't be avoided. This was something that most disciples had to face. Normally, there would be no punishment for failures. Jiang Hao's focus was always on keeping a low profile. But with the advancement of his cultivation realm, he had become the leader. Trying to pass off unnoticed would be troublesome, as he couldn't deceive everyone in the group. Just like last time, there were 4 people in the group, including him. What surprised him, however, was that all 3 were people he knew. There was Zheng Shejiu from the Ice Moon Valley, who was now in the early stage of the Golden Core Realm. There was also Xin Yue from the Thunder Fire Peak, who was at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. Yu from the Flowing Waterfall was also at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. The first 2 had cooperated multiple times before with him. The last one had worked with him twice. Senior brother Zheng, you have also reached the Golden Core Realm, Jiang Hao said with admiration. 13 years ago, senior brother Zheng was at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. Now, he had advanced to the Golden Core Realm. Jiang Hao wondered why he wasn't the one leading the team instead. Xin Yue's advancement was also quite rapid. She had advanced from the early stage to the late stage in just 13 years. It's quite fast, considering Han Ming had just reached the peak of the Foundation Establishment Realm. Xin Yue was most likely in her 40s now. Han Ming was 31. It seems junior brother Han is not young anymore. Jiang Hao shook his head and chuckled. After that, he planned to go back and prepare. It was not safe to enter the Sea Fog Cave unprepared. He needed to see if the Saint Bandits had done anything new recently. Unfortunately, he believed he couldn't find anything about them unless he could lure Yin Wei out. Perhaps I can lure Yin Wei out. Once I appraise him, I'll know if he has done anything. Yin Wei used the Bloodwish path and hid in the shadows. Even people at the Soul Ascension realm worked under him. It meant that his status and influence might be quite extraordinary. So, what method can I use to lure him out? Jiang Hao thought along the way but didn't find an answer. However, he still had half a month. Perhaps he could come up with something. During this time, he also needed to ask about the exact situation of the Sea Fog Cave. Ever since they had cooperated with the overseas people, there had been very little information from the Sea Fog Cave. There was no news about what might have actually happened inside. Ordinary disciples probably wouldn't know what happened inside. Fortunately, he could go and ask at the Lawless Tower. Perhaps he could learn a thing or two from there. A few days later, in mid-January, Jiang Hao went to the Lawless Tower and learned that many people had already entered the Sea Fog Cave for exploration. There wasn't anything too dangerous for now. It was still manageable. Therefore, They even allowed Foundation Establishment realm cultivators to enter the cave for missions. Jiang Hao still couldn't rest easy. But there hadn't been any major conflicts so far, and he wasn't sure if the Saint Bandits had left or had a different plan. There was also no progress in the stone tablet. Gui and the others didn't mention anything about the Saint Bandits. Seemingly, there hadn't been significant developments overseas. The only good news was that Gui seemed to have successfully cursed Yin Wei. Although weak, the curse was indeed a success. However, it seemed that the person had sensed Gui's location, so she was being careful. Jiang Hao was the same. Yin Wei's strength didn't seem to be weak. His methods were not lacking in strategy and strength. Senior brother Jiang, some called him. After wrapping up his sails, Jiang Hao was walking along the path near the entrance of the Cliff of Broken Hearts. He turned and saw Han Ming. 3 other people accompanied him. 2 men and 1 woman. Junior brother Han, who are these people? Jiang Hao was surprised. I recruited them for the outer sect, Han Ming said with a confident smile. Jiang Hao was surprised. Does he really expect to surpass Xiao Li with the help of these 3? In fact, no matter how talented someone was, they couldn't surpass Xiao Li. After all, this young dragon was not truly at the Foundation Establishment realm. She was just recovering her lost cultivation. Her true cultivation might even have surpassed the sect masters. It was quite normal for her at the Foundation Establishment realm to be able to fight on par with those at the Golden Core realm. In the eyes of their cliff master, Xiao Li was extraordinary. The only regret was that she was practically unmanageable. He had also heard that whenever Cliff Master tried to teach her, Xiao Li would always fall asleep. In the end, the Cliff Master gave up. He would only say, "Go and eat." Naturally, Xiao Li was delighted. Jiang Hao looked at the 3 people behind Han Ming. On the left was a rather tall man who appeared to be at the 5th stage of the Lifeblood Refinement realm but was actually at the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. There were traces of the Great Thousand Spirit technique in his spiritual energy. Jiang Hao wondered if he was from the Great Thousand God sect. In the middle was a young girl who seemed to have no cultivation aura, but in reality, she was at the late stage of the Golden Core realm. It seemed she had traces of the cultivation technique he had seen on Sichu Jian and the others. He wondered if she was from the Black Heaven sect. The last one was a young boy who appeared to be destitute and weak but had a strong and vigorous lifeblood. His spiritual energy was similar to the Heavenly Saint spiritual technique. Jiang Hao wondered if he was from the Heavenly Saint sect. Regardless of their cultivation realms, these 3 individuals had one thing in common. Their method of concealment was too crude. Anyone with a higher cultivation than them could see through their guise. Junior brother Han, are you going to meet the Cliff Master? Jiang Hao asked. Master is busy, so I'll just meet with a senior brother. If the senior brother is also busy, I'll just arrange their accommodation directly, Han Ming said. Then, junior brother Han, be careful on your way, Jiang Hao said. If he were to meet the master, Jiang Hao thought Han Ming might be in trouble. The people would be worried about meeting the Cliff Master, but meeting a fellow senior would be no problem. However, what they didn't know was that the fellow disciple helping with tasks was most likely senior brother Bai Yi. If these 3 Golden Core realm cultivators had disguised themselves better, senior brother Bai Yi probably wouldn't have bothered to investigate. It was just unfortunate for them. Even if they had advanced in their cultivation realm, senior brother Bai Yi wouldn't have said anything. Most of the time, concealing one's cultivation didn't necessarily mean that they were a spy, but the senior would note down their names for future reference, just in case. Jiang Hao watched Han Ming leave. The next day, Cheng Chou told Jiang Hao that Han Ming had received great praise for capturing 3 spies. He had calmly handed them over to senior brother Bai Yi. The 3 Golden Core realm spies had contributed to Han Ming's merit. Chapter 504. Chapter 504. Would anyone really wipe the dirt? Chapter 504. Would anyone really wipe the dirt? In the following days, Jiang Hao did not see junior brother Han again. He heard that he had gone out for training, and he didn't know how long it would take for him to come back. In the spirit herb garden, Jiang Hao smiled. Junior brother Han's efforts were admirable. The harder he worked, the sooner he would become one of the top disciples. He hadn't received any achievements for a long time. This thing was indeed good for him. The higher the achievements, the lesser the probability that others dared to mess with him. But, for Jiang Hao, more contribution would mean a higher possibility of being taken off the suspect list. In late January, the spirit beast still didn't return. So, Jiang Hao handed the task of watering the heavenly fragrance Dao flower to Xiao Li. Other spirit herbs could stop growing, but he couldn't take a risk with the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. There were too many people watching him. Both Elder Baiji and Hong Yuye were watching him like a hawk. Xiao Li readily agreed. After that, he went to the cafeteria and gave enough spirit stones to take care of Xiao Li's meal. Senior brother Jiang, you don't have to be so formal. You can give them to me later when you come back, said Feng Yang. Jiang Hao was already at the Golden Core realm, so as a Foundation Establishment realm disciple, Feng Yang was even more respectful than before. As his cultivation realm increased, his status in the sect also grew. Of course. After exchanging a few polite words, Jiang Hao turned and left. Later, he went to the outer sect's spirit herb garden. With his presence there, it would be much easier for Cheng Chou in the future to manage the garden. After arranging that, he went to the law enforcement hall. He found that Zheng Shizhou and the others were already there. Senior brother Zheng, senior sister Xin, and senior sister Yu, greetings, Jiang Hao said politely. Zheng Shizhou felt quite emotional. He recalled the time 13 years ago when they had gone on a mission together. Jiang Hao had been the weakest among them, and now, he was the strongest. He had even become a team leader. The changes were truly incredible. Xin Yuyue was the most touched. Before, she and Jiang Hao were at the same level, but now, she was at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, and he was already at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. Before Jiang Hao arrived, she was actually feeling conflicted. She was torn between whether to address him as senior brother or junior brother, considering the difference in their cultivation realms. But he still called her senior sister, so she didn't need to overthink. Yu Yu was also surprised. His progress was too fast, even faster than some of the true disciples. Junior brother Jiang, you're being too polite. We're here to cooperate with you this time. Feel free to tell us what you need us to do. Zheng Shizhou smiled. All right. Thank you, seniors, said Jiang Hao with a smile. That was good. He had been worried that they might have a clash of opinions. These three people had worked with him before, and he couldn't leave them to die if something happened. The four of them flew on their swords and headed toward the direction of the Sea Fog Cave. Junior brother Jiang, have you been to the Sea Fog Cave before? Xin Yuyue asked on the way. I have been there once. It gave me a feeling of danger, Jiang Hao said. Danger? Yu Yu asked in confusion. She had a large sword on her back. But I heard that it's not very dangerous there. Yeah. It seems so on the surface, but it's just my feeling, Jiang Hao said truthfully. In fact, he didn't know where the danger lay, but he felt it anyway. It seems that we need to be careful. By the way, I heard that entering the sea fog this time will affect both vision and perception, said Zheng Shizhou with the fan in his hand. Jiang Hao nodded. He had also heard about it. So, he was even more worried. Unfortunately, during this time, he hadn't found Yin Wei or anything related to the Saint Bandits. He could only take it one step at a time. Zheng Shizhou and Xin Yuyue were grateful. This time, they felt that they were safest with Jiang Hao on the team. After working with him several times, they understood how unique he was. He was already extraordinary at the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, and now, at the early stage of the Golden Core realm, he was bound to be even more exceptional. At the Sea Fog Cave, they found many people taking a break outside. Every month or so, you have to come out and rest for 3 days at least. Then, you can go back in, said a senior as she came to receive and brief Jiang Hao's team. She was from the Law Enforcement Hall and was in charge of briefing the ones who had this mission. What is our task? Jiang Hao asked. Go to Route 2 and take over that area. You don't need to do much. You just have to guard it, said the senior. What's over there? Jiang Hao asked. The task seemed safe and easy, but he knew that it would turn dangerous. The fact that they were supposed to guard the place meant there was something important there. Would one Golden Core Realm disciple be enough? The people working at the Lawless Tower were beyond the Soul Ascension Realm, and they had still disappeared from this cave. One Golden Core Realm disciple was definitely not enough for the dangers inside. Don't worry. It's not an important place. It's just that. It feels a bit strange. Besides, there are already people guarding the place. The sect only wants you to take over the task for a while, said the senior. Jiang Hao nodded. He could only go in and take a look. But there was a problem. There were already people over there, and he needed to take over. That wouldn't be easy. As they entered the cave, Jiang Hao found that there were many sea monsters there. What are these? Zheng Shijiu and the others were surprised. They were all tentacle-like creatures that they had never seen before. They hadn't even seen such creatures in the bestiary. They call themselves the Sea Patrol Spirit Beasts, said the senior. You need to make them familiar with your scent. If there is an accident, they can find you the fastest. You must let them lead the way for you. The poison in the sea fog is not the most dangerous thing here. Losing your way might be the most terrifying thing that you might face. These creatures can guide your way. You can easily tame them with meat. For those with higher intelligence, you can even speak to them. Jiang Hao and the others were surprised. The Sea Patrol Spirit Beasts were indeed unusual. Zheng Shijiu and the others were puzzled. Why were they called the Sea Patrol Spirit Beast when they were actually in the Sea Fog Cave? With a Sea Patrol Spirit Beast as their guide, Jiang Hao and the others headed further inside. Surprisingly, this time it was Ajah who led the way. Originally, they had arranged for it to be another Sea Patrol Spirit Beast, but Ajah volunteered and left the supervisors with no choice. Ajah was the most trustworthy among the beasts and was said to have acknowledged Elder Baiji as its master. Jiang Hao agreed with it. Ajah wouldn't betray them, so there was no need to worry. With another beast, he would need to be careful. However, Ajah was okay. It could even communicate with them. At the Heavenly Note sect, two people looked in the direction of the Sea Fog Cave from a small path. They have entered the Sea Fog Cave. Isn't that just perfect? It's good, but there are records inside. If they are discovered, wouldn't they hit the jackpot? It's unlikely. The sea fog blocks most perception, especially after many years of erosion on the walls. They certainly won't be able to find anything, unless someone is willing to put in the effort to wipe the walls, and even then, it would take a long time. Is there anyone like that? No. They would at most use techniques or magic treasures. However, that wouldn't have an impact. The two smiled at each other and no longer worried about the matter. I heard that the plan is to connect to the cave from the royal family. Is that true? I don't know. They usually don't inform us of their plans, but it's not impossible. Let's continue to gather what we need. By the way, aren't you concerned that the person you're observing seems to have gone there? There's no rush. We'll see later. If needed, we'll go in to save him. Ha ha ha. That would be perfect. The two no longer paid attention to the Sea Fog Cave and instead headed toward a crowd. When are you planning to contact the people of the White Moon Lake? No rush. We need to wait for things to settle down first. It's too risky now. If you're not in a hurry to make contact, I'm even less so. After all, almost everyone anxious has ended up dead. Boom. One of them almost tripped. I wonder who in the Imperial City is keeping an eye on me. Their cultivation realm is very high too. Chapter 505. Chapter 505. Doesn't he realize who he is talking to? Chapter 505. Doesn't he realize who he is talking to? At the Imperial City, in the underground palace, Baiju was standing in the center of a huge spirit stone array. The surrounding spirit stones were lit on fire, but they quickly turned to ashes. This person has a high cultivation realm and is very keen. He has almost sensed my location several times now. The first time she was noticed, she changed her approach, but unexpectedly, she was noticed again. Luckily, the curse was successful. It could cause some trouble to the person. It might not affect them too much, but even a slight inconvenience could prove fatal, especially in a battle. Unfortunately, the information is too little. Otherwise, The effect would definitely be great. If I could just see him once, he would be dead within 3 years. Baizhu sighed and waved her hand. The ashes spread across the entire palace and disappeared. Then, she left. She had secretly investigated Yin Wei but had found nothing. A person who could attract Jing's attention might not be an ordinary person. However, although Yin Wei couldn't be found, she had managed to find traces of the Saint Bandits. They were right near the imperial city. From the signs, it was likely that the royal family was indeed cooperating with them. It was unclear what they were up to. Of course, as a princess who wasn't important enough, she couldn't participate. There were quite a few factions within the royal family, and it wasn't her place to dictate what they should do. It was best to just watch quietly. Back at her residence, Qiao Yi approached her. "Princess, have you tried the techniques that Prince Baizhu suggested?" "I've tried them." Baizhu smiled and nodded. "And what were the results?" Qiao Yi was quite interested. Baizhu shrugged. "None of them suit me." Qiao Yi couldn't help but sigh. "It's all right. I've already told you that I'm a genius." Baizhu smiled. "These small matters aren't worth worrying about. By the way, has anything significant happened in the imperial city lately? I don't know about other matters, but there are indeed some things regarding you." Qiao Yi furrowed her brows. "Me?" Baizhu sat down by the stone table and smiled. "What could there possibly be to talk about me? Are they saying I'm getting old yet again?" "Indeed, some other princesses have mentioned age-related matters. They say a princess who can't cultivate won't find a good marriage prospect and would end up just being a burden," Auntie Qiao said. Baizhu was speechless. After all, she wasn't dependent on her family. "In fact, there is another troublesome matter," Qiao Yi said in a low voice. "Someone has come to propose marriage to you." "Propose marriage to me?" Baizhu was stunned and pointed at herself in disbelief. "Yes." Qiao Yi nodded. "It's..." Auntie Qiao was about to say it when suddenly she turned toward the back gate and said in a low voice, "He's here again." Baizhu looked curiously toward the gate. A middle-aged man in armor walked in. It was General Lin, who had visited before. As soon as he entered, he bowed to Baizhu. "Greetings, Princess Baizhu." "General Lin?" Baizhu smiled. "Are you acting as a messenger for someone?" Auntie Qiao had explained everything clearly. So, Baizhu knew the purpose of General Lin's visit. "You are wise as always, Princess," said General Lin in praise. "I have come on behalf of Crown Prince Shangguan." "The eldest son of the Shangguan family?" Baizhu asked. "The one with a bad temperament. He is just young and passionate," General Lin said. "Princess, please consider it. Being a princess in the imperial city will be difficult in a few years. It would indeed be difficult in later years, especially with her lack of value." Baizhu understood his implication. She smiled. "Is that all, General Lin?" "That's all." General Lin nodded. "In that case, you may leave," Baizhu said with a smile. General Lin frowned, but he turned and left. "So insolent," Auntie Qiao said in a low voice. "Indeed, he doesn't even consider who he's talking to. He's talking to the first genius of the royal family and the most exceptional talent to have ever been born," said Baizhu jokingly. Auntie Qiao was speechless. "How much farther is it?" Jiang Hao asked Ajah inside the sea fog cave. "We're almost there," Ajah said. The surrounding was full of sea fog, and it affected their vision and perception. It was even impossible to determine which side the walls were on. However, they could hear some sounds. Jiang Hao tried to make sense of the surroundings using what he had learned from the Nameless Manual. He tried to pay attention to the extension of sounds and the movement of the fog. Slowly, the vague pattern of the passage appeared in his mind. He stopped in his tracks. Zhang Shijiu and the others also stopped behind him. They were puzzled. "Why aren't you coming along?" Ajah asked from the front. "Do you have any grievances with us?" Jiang Hao asked suddenly. This surprised Zhang Shijiu and the others. Ajah didn't seem surprised. It nodded. "Yes, there are grievances indeed. That woman tricked me. I want revenge. I'm not familiar with Elder Baizhi." "None of us are," Jiang Hao said. Ajah was deceived, which was inevitable. Its wisdom was definitely not on par with Elder Baiji. Humans, you're all indeed cunning and sly, Ajah said. It turned and walked in another direction. Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. There was a cliff ahead this time. Falling here might not be life-threatening, but it would be painful and would cause a lot of problems. It was better to avoid it if possible. Zheng Shijiu and the others had no idea what was going on. All they knew was that after Jiang Hao spoke, the spirit beast had abandoned the original path. It looked a bit angry. They understood that the previous path was problematic. What was even more puzzling was that Jiang Hao seemed to know this spirit beast. They looked at each other and exchanged knowing glances. After that, nothing unexpected happened, and they arrived at a place isolated from the sea fog. This place was backed against the wall and surrounded by a simple fence, and there were 2 guards in front of the gate. They could even see some houses inside. The arrival of Jiang Hao and the others made the guards nervous, but they relaxed when they saw that they were from the Heavenly Note sect. "Who are you?" one of the guards asked. "We're here to take over." Jiang Hao presented the token. "Please wait a moment." One of the guards went inside. Shortly after, 3 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators came out. 2 men and 1 woman. All of them were in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. The leader was a middle-aged man who was tall and burly. The muscles on his upper body were distinct, and he was not wearing any clothes. It looked like he could unleash tremendous power at any moment. He took the token and then nodded. "It's indeed the Heavenly Note sect here to take over." "Let me see." The woman took the token and glanced at it. "They could have been intercepted. How do you prove that you are Jiang Hao? It shouldn't be a problem, but not everyone who comes to take over can be trusted. At the very least, you have to convince us of your identities or your task," the bald Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator said. "How can we convince you?" Jiang Hao asked. He had already known that these people would make things difficult. They were just doing this because they could. He didn't intend to establish dominance here. He would do whatever they said as long as they didn't try to harass or harm him and the others. "First, you need to show us whether you can guard this place," said the middle-aged man. He seemed to be the leader. "Before, we guarded the gate for 30 days to stabilize this place. Now, if you and your group can guard the gate for 10 days, we will acknowledge you." Chapter 506. Chapter 506. There's a problem with this wall. Chapter 506. There's a problem with this wall. "I thought we were called here to guard the main gate," said Xin Yue coldly. Zheng Shijiu and others frowned slightly. These people were deliberately making things difficult because they wanted to show their dominance. "Is that what you were told?" "We didn't say anything like that." The woman at the Foundation Establishment Realm smiled. The other 2 also smiled as if enjoying the show. "All right. We'll guard it for 10 days. Jiang Hao nodded. The 3 Foundation Establishment Realm individuals were surprised that he agreed so quickly. Xin Yue and the others were a bit angry, but since Jiang Hao had spoken, there was nothing more to say. "It seems you have the courage and fortitude worthy of being the leader this time, fellow disciple Jiang," the middle-aged man in charge said with a meaningful look. Jiang Hao then walked to the inside. But before he could enter, he was stopped by 2 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. "Can't enter." Jiang Hao looked at the middle-aged man who seemed to be in charge. "You can't." The man shook his head. "Why?" Jiang Hao asked calmly. "You haven't gained our approval yet. You need to defend against the enemy outside for 10 days first. Only then can you gain our approval to enter," the middle-aged man said. "Can I enter after 10 days then?" Jiang Hao asked again. "After 10 days, you can enter the main gate. However, there are 3 subsequent tests. If you pass them all, we will submit and assist you in defending this place," the middle-aged man said apologetically. "It's unavoidable. After all, this place is not ordinary. With a new leader arriving, we have to be cautious in our approach. Assessment is necessary. I hope you understand. Aren't you being a little unreasonable? Junior brother Jiang came here for a sect mission, and you don't even let him enter the door," Zheng Shijiu said in a low voice. His fan was already closed. You are right, of course. Since it's a sect mission, you can call in the person who assigned the mission. If they say there's no need for an assessment, then we will naturally listen, the middle-aged man said politely. Are you from overseas, fellow disciple? Jiang Hao asked calmly. Indeed, but we are cooperating with the Heavenly Note sect. If it's really guaranteed by the Heavenly Note sect, we will also comply. Would you like to go ahead with the assessment or go fetch the person who assigned the mission to confirm this? The man asked kindly. Jiang Hao looked at the man and suddenly looked surprised at someone behind him. Heavenly King Bu Dong? The middle-aged man was startled and instinctively turned. Clang! The half-moon blade was unsheathed. At the sound, the middle-aged man knew he had been deceived. While defending, he began to retreat. Bam! The hilt hit his forehead heavily and sent him flying. But this gave him the time he needed. His defense was fully activated, and his treasures were revealed. A surging power was unleashed. But before he could even see the opponent, moonlight clouded his vision. Moonslaying. At this moment, he saw a figure appear in front of him, followed by a sweeping blade. Bam! The blade met the defenses. It swept through everything. His defense shattered and his treasure broke. The blade cut across his neck. In an instant, the middle-aged man felt his vision blur and spin. A sense of unexplained fear overpowered everything. But before he could fully understand the situation, his consciousness was fading. It was too late for any regrets. Jiang Hao stood in front of the corpse. He was silent for a moment. Then, he used a basic lightning technique to ensure that the person was dead. He didn't see a storage treasure, and even if he did, he couldn't pick it up in front of everyone. Looting was different from killing. No one had expected the situation to escalate this quickly. Zheng Shejiu reacted very quickly and exerted his strength to face the two people in front to prevent them from fighting. Xin Yue's sword was unsheathed, and Yu Yu held the giant sword behind her. At this point, regardless of what happened, they had to face it head-on. Jiang Hao turned to the two Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators and asked calmly, "Have we passed the assessment?" His blade emitted a faint light. It seemed the blade was already at the necks of the two people, and if they said the wrong thing, it would strike down. The woman and the bald man panicked. Their hearts raced. Finally, the two of them lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. Of course, fellow disciple. Only then did Jiang Hao retract his sword and walk inside. This time, no one dared to stop him. The previous guards were also fearful. It wasn't until Jiang Hao went in that the two Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators breathed a sigh of relief. They hadn't expected the newcomer to be so ruthless. He had even killed the strongest person among them with one strike. At this time, Ajah was resting. It was not surprising at all. After all, besides that woman, only this person looked it straight in the eyes. That woman was a bad person, and this young man wasn't a good person either. Jiang Hao walked into the main gate and found that there were quite a few people inside. There weren't many places to stay. It was mostly open spaces. And there were many broken stones on the open ground. Jiang Hao felt that this place was familiar. Is this a mine? Zheng Shijiu looked around. I think you are right, junior brother Jiang. There really is a mine here. It is no wonder they wouldn't let us in. The mine was discovered by the people here, so they could secretly keep a portion of the gains for themselves. Originally, the three Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators had been in charge here. They might be getting a considerable portion of the shares. Now that a new manager had suddenly come, it meant a huge loss for them, so they were naturally unwilling to give in. At that point, the two Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators rushed over to explain. They discovered the mine here accidentally, so they kept half of the gains and left the other half here. If it was discovered, they would submit the half they had saved. As they spoke, they showed them the ores they had collected. Jiang Hao looked at it and realized they had kept at least 80% of the total gain. Show me the mine. Jiang Hao looked inside and observed. He found that the mine here was relatively average in size. Of course, he would still dig here. He wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. But he recalled Heavenly Steely Mountain. Are there any stone tablets or something similar here? No, said the woman, Xiao Xiaohui. What a pity. Jiang Hao walked to the outside of the mine and dusted the wall. He remembered very clearly that just wiping away the dirt from stone tablets produced bubbles. Later, after wiping the treasures many times, only the primordial heavenly blade had given him a bubble. But it was just white bubbles. Suddenly, a white bubble fell before his eyes. Jiang Hao was stunned. What's going on here? Why would wiping the wall produce bubbles? Perplexed, he continued to wipe the wall. The more Jiang Hao wiped, the more surprised he became. This wall was strange. Normally, walls would never produce bubbles, let alone so many. Although there were no blue bubbles, this was just the beginning. There would definitely be more bubbles to come. Jiang Hao stopped wiping and then turned to Zheng Shijiu. Senior brother Zheng, I'll leave everything here to you while I examine this place. Chapter 507. Chapter 507. Was your junior brother normal before? Chapter 507. Was your junior brother normal before? Zheng Shijiu was temporarily appointed the leader. He was surprised but didn't say anything. After all, Jiang Hao rarely did this kind of thing without reason. What puzzled him, however, was what he wanted to examine in this place. Everyone was curious, but no one asked any questions. They could only follow his arrangements. The immediate priority was to understand this place and then deal with the matter of the mine. The mine was still a secret, and there was no need to report it right away. Everyone wanted to make some profit from it. However, they needed to be careful about this to avoid trouble. When Zheng Shijiu and the others left, Jiang Hao faced the wall alone. He didn't do much but started to wipe it. He wanted to see how much he could wipe in a day and figure out why the wall produced bubbles. It took a long time. He took a piece of cloth and focused on the task. As time passed, white bubbles kept appearing. The constant notifications were refreshing. It felt wonderful to get so many bubbles. He could feel the change in his body. But after wiping for a while, all he got were white bubbles. Even green ones were exceptionally rare. The next day, Jiang Hao was still wiping the wall. The area where he had wipes gradually became smoother, but there was still a lot of dirt. After a day, the bubbles didn't surprise Jiang Hao so much, as the number of bubbles gradually began to decrease. The quality of the gains had also improved, and he obtained several spirit swords. What surprised him the most was that the dirt and grime here were unbelievably thick. If Heavenly Steely Mountain had dirt this thick, I wonder how many blue bubbles would appear when it's wiped clean. Jiang Hao sighed. Back then, he hadn't wiped it completely clean. It was such a pity. On the third day, Jiang Hao managed to get a blue bubble. Although it was just one blue bubble, it was still great. The heavenly fragrance Dao flower produced 2 blue bubbles every 7 days. But wiping this wall produced 1 blue bubble every 3 days. Moreover, finding a blue bubble also depended on luck. Perhaps he would find another blue bubble tomorrow. On the 4th day, it happened. It really appeared. His luck was decent. Even though no one had come to ask him anything, there was still a lot of gossip. No one understood what he was doing. Most of the people said, "Look, the manager is wiping the wall again. Do you think he'll stop today?" "No, he does that every day. I really don't know what he's here for." Even a Golden Core Realm cultivator Zheng Shijiu couldn't understand why Jiang Hao was acting like this. Now, the 5 of them were sitting together discussing Jiang Hao. "You're from the same sect, right? Don't you know what he is doing?" asked Xiao Xiaohui. Zheng Shijiu felt a little embarrassed. Junior brother Jiang is a peculiar person. He seems to prefer silence and is always alone, so it's normal not to understand what he plans. But can't he just stop wiping the wall day and night? Everyone knows that disciple Jiang is in charge here. His every move affects the surroundings, said the bald man and hesitated. How about the 3 of you go and persuade him? Or we could enclose the area where junior brother Jiang is, Xin Yuyue said. That's a good idea. Yu nodded. We can publicly announce that junior brother Jiang is digging for the secret of the sea fog cave. The 5 of them felt that it was a good idea. After all, no one knew what the secret was, so it didn't matter whether it was there or not. The most important thing was to stabilize the place first. This area wasn't particularly dangerous, and there were no special changes. As long as there were no internal problems, there shouldn't be any issues. In the following days, Jiang Hao noticed that the walls were starting to clear out around him. They enclosed the area where he was. Apart from the entrance to the mine, there were walls everywhere, and the interior space was not small either. Lighting arrays had also been set up. The quiet environment made Jiang Hao feel quite comfortable. He went out to thank senior brother Zheng in person. When he was asked what he was doing, he couldn't answer, so he chose to remain silent. He couldn't tell them that he was here for bubbles. So, what else could he say? Should he tell them that he was just cleaning the walls? That was partly the truth, but they might not believe him. So, silence was the best choice. Perhaps they would come up with their own answers to this question. This was a short-term solution, but in the long run. This wall did have a secret, but he didn't know it at the moment. As for the secret, he didn't care. He didn't have any intention of taking advantage of any opportunities, no matter what they were. As long as he could wipe the wall in peace, he was satisfied. He found that about half of the walls had bubbles. That meant the secret was within these walls. The secret might be something impactful. Whether he wanted to reveal it or not depended entirely on him. With so many people watching, it was impossible to keep it a secret. Shaking his head, Jiang Hao continued to wipe the wall. White bubbles kept appearing. Seeing all the +1s made him feel a bit emotional. If he could gain +1s for intelligence too, he would be more composed when dealing with Hongyue in the future. Unfortunately, he couldn't add to his intelligence. He couldn't understand how someone with a warped mind thought. Jiang Hao chuckled at himself and then continued to wipe. Becoming a genius was impossible, but improving his strength was a better choice. In the sea fog cave, there was no concept of day and night, and many people lost track of time. They could only go about their own business each day. Junior sister Yu, how long has it been? Zheng Shijiu asked. At this moment, Yu was standing in front of a wooden board and marking it to count the days. About a month. A month. Xin Yuyue looked at the wall in disbelief. Junior brother Jiang hasn't come out for a month. What could be the reason? I don't know, but the people already believe our explanation. They all think there's a secret inside and don't dare to approach recklessly. Zheng Shijiu sighed helplessly. At least, that's the situation on the surface. As for the discussions happening in secret among the people, they were unaware of it. There were always some people who would have doubts. Was your junior brother normal before all this? Xiao Xiaohui walked over to them. Xin Yuyue thought for a moment. I heard he just worked in the spirit herb garden and didn't go anywhere else. Zheng Shijiu looked outside. According to the time, the sect's people should be coming to check our situation soon. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone became nervous. There was a mine here, and the arrival of sect members might bring trouble. However, it was unlikely they would make things difficult for the people here. After all, they hadn't done anything to harm the sect. Hey, something seems to be approaching, Ajah said suddenly. Everyone was startled and immediately went outside to check. They understood how special Ajah was. It had extraordinary intelligence and a high status. It was Elder Baiji's envoy. So even though Ajah's strength was just average, no one dared to show it any disrespect. When it said something was approaching, nobody questioned it. Chapter 508, Chapter 508, Deciding not to greet junior brother to save him the embarrassment. Chapter 508, Deciding not to greet junior brother to save him the embarrassment. Senior, what is it? Zheng Shijiu rushed to Ajah's side. At this moment, Ajah was nibbling on some meat. Seems like thieving sea monsters. Thieving sea monsters? Yu was puzzled. We named them that. The sea fog cave doesn't just have patrolling sea beasts like us. There are other things here. The most annoying ones are the thieving sea monsters. They're fast, agile, and love to steal things from others. Once they steal, they run, and it's hard to guard against them. They only steal and attack as a group, said Ajah in disdain. Xin Yue and others felt a bit sympathetic. Some were spirit beasts, while others were sea monsters. Indeed, it was believed that whoever named them would suffer bad luck. How strong are they? Zheng Shijiu asked the most crucial question. Stronger than us, but slower than us, Ajah said. Prepare for battle. Zheng Shijiu instructed everyone to put down what they were doing and prepare for the encounter. He said, we don't have time. Test their strength, and if something feels off, go find junior brother Jiang. Jiang Hao had amazed them by killing the leader before in one strike. Even if it was a surprise attack, that strike was something none of them could block. So undoubtedly, Jiang Hao was the strongest among them. Outside the sea fog cave, Zhuo Cheng walked over from the lawless tower. In a few days, he would enter the sea fog cave to assess the situation there. This was the task assigned by the lawless tower. After all, they were the ones most familiar with the sea fog cave. 7 locations. They are a bit further away and might take some time, said the junior respectfully. The first line under the jurisdiction of Heavenly King Bu Dong. The second point of the second line under Jiang Hao's jurisdiction from the Cliff of Broken Hearts, and the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Once the locations were confirmed, Zhuo Cheng was surprised. Junior brother Jiang is also in there. Do you know him? The junior was surprised. Not really. Just heard about him. Zhuo Cheng didn't say much but observed the entrance. He waited to enter the cave and check the situation. The sea fog cave had changed rapidly, and they hadn't found any suspicious places, which made them concerned. The lack of suspicion was suspicious in itself. Senior sister Yinshaw was still missing. There were no traces of the tentacles they were looking for overseas. A lot of manpower and resources had been invested here, but there had been no gains so far. It made many people anxious. Inside the sea fog cave, under the enclosed walls, Jiang Hao looked at the relatively clean wall and felt strange. If he continued to wipe a few more times, he would be able to see the truth. Then, he would know the situation. However, he gave up and continued to wipe other places. If he was noticed, he might not be able to continue wiping. In this month, he had obtained 18 bubbles here. On average, each had 9 points. With the heavenly fragrance Dao flower, he only managed to get 4 points in 1 month. Even with the holy medicine herb, he only got 5. Here, it was almost double the amount. This place was better. He wouldn't go back for a while and would devote himself to the sect mission instead. However, on this day, he felt a surge of power coming from outside. He checked the area and found no problems. Then, he went back in. Those attackers weren't that strong. However, in the evening, Zheng Shijiu found him and said they had made a discovery outside. This made Jiang Hao have to put down the cloth. Outside, he saw everyone sitting on the ground. They looked tired and disheveled. Although the attackers weren't strong, they were extremely fast. Nobody enjoyed fighting them. Senior brother Zheng, what did you find? Jiang Hao asked. It's this. Zheng Shijiu showed him a creature similar to Ajah. It had tentacles similar to Ajah, and it had 3 eyes. At this moment, it was holding a round crystal, which displayed various runes. When touched, it emitted a faint light. Is it a magic treasure? Jiang Hao asked. Yes. Ajah asked them, and they said it was stolen from the depths when no one was around, Zheng Shijiu said. Their ability to steal things is quite extraordinary. Junior brother Jiang, we need to be careful. It seems they can steal from a distance. The depths. Jiang Hao was quite surprised. Not our people. It shouldn't be. Ajah said our people haven't been to that area yet, Zheng Shijiu said. Sacred bandits. Jiang Hao frowned. This reminded him of the figure he had seen when he first came to this cave. If they encountered those people, this place would be far more dangerous. He carefully examined the crystal and found that the runes carried a kind of power, but it was all locked inside. This thing had no aura. It was difficult to understand. He appraised it. The information astonished Jiang Hao. It was evident who Yi Jian was. He was certainly from the Saint Bandits. As for this Shangguan Hengyu, Jiang Hao wasn't sure who it was. However, Since they were stealing the royal aura and favor, this person must be located in the imperial city. In reality, Jiang Hao didn't care whether the royal blessing was stolen or not. But if they were the saint bandits, it did concern him. The sacred bandits had set their eyes on him and were somehow connected to the Heavenly Note sect. He couldn't let the opponent become stronger, no matter how he looked at it, especially since the Heavenly Note sect had sent so many people in. There might be a traitor among them. Jiang Hao hesitated. This place didn't seem safe at all. The core life bead couldn't be left here. It would cause trouble. Jiang Hao looked at Zheng Shijiu. Senior brother Zheng, I have to trouble you to make a trip. Then, he took the bead from the thieving sea monster's hands and handed it over to him. Take a jar and give this to the seniors outside in charge, Jiang Hao said. All right. Zheng Shijiu didn't hesitate. After they left, Jiang Hao stood in place for a long time and made sure no one was following them. Unlike the others, he could roughly perceive everything in the surroundings using the knowledge from the nameless manual. After half a day, when he saw Zheng Shijiu return, Jiang Hao finally breathed a sigh of relief. He continued to go back and wipe the wall. It was expected that people from outside would come in soon to investigate the matter. He didn't know if he would still be allowed to stay here and wipe the walls. It would be such a loss if he had to leave. When he returned to the wall, he found that the cloth he had left behind was missing. It had been stolen. The next day, Zhuo Cheng arrived at the place. He was surprised as soon as he came in. The people here were actually mining. It was no wonder no one wanted to go back and rest. But he didn't ask about it. After all, these people had made great contributions, and they could do as they pleased. Where is Jiang Hao? Zhuo Cheng asked the people around him. Senior brother, your arrival was too sudden. We didn't have time to inform junior brother Jiang. He should be over there by the wall, Zheng Shijiu said awkwardly. Indeed, it was too sudden. They didn't know someone was coming until they had already arrived. I'll go take a look, Zhuo Cheng said. This time, Jiang Hao, as the manager, had made a considerable contribution. However, just as Zhuo Cheng walked inside, he saw Jiang Hao diligently wiping the wall clean. What's going on? Junior brother Jiang is here wiping the walls. He must have found something here, Zheng Shijiu said. Zhuo Cheng was a considerate person who paid attention to people's words. He decided to go about his own affairs to avoid embarrassing the people here and Jiang Hao. Then, he left. He had to go back and report to Elder Baiji. Chapter 509, Chapter 509, His wiping the wall clean? Chapter 509, His wiping the wall clean? Do you know what it is? Baiji asked as she held the crystal sphere. It should be a life core bead. Although it's only a part of it and the technique is extremely ancient, it is somewhat similar to the present ones, Zhuo Cheng said. He reported to her as soon as he left the sea fog cave. Do you know the function of this life core bead? Baiji asked. It's still uncertain. We need to find the altar first, Zhuo Cheng said in a low voice. With the help of the sea patrol beasts and the thieving sea monsters, there is a possibility of finding the location. But since this thing exists, it means that there are others inside the sea fog cave. Baiji nodded. Who discovered this life core bead? Jiang Hao, Zhuo Cheng said. Baiji was surprised. She was starting to suspect that the person behind Jiang Hao had deliberately arranged this. What is he doing inside? Zhuo Cheng hesitated for a long while. His wiping the walls clean. Elder Baiji was momentarily stunned. She thought she had misheard. What? His wiping the walls clean, Zhuo Cheng said. Elder Baiji fell silent. Zhuo Cheng felt awkward. He had supposedly been wiping that wall for a month now and hadn't found anything. They could only assume that he was bored and was just doing something for the sake of it. Elder Baiji asked for some more information and then let him leave. The situation in the sea fog cave was serious, and she needed to ask the sect master's opinion. Wiping the wall clean? Hong Yuye's voice was indifferent as ever, but this time, she sounded slightly surprised. Baiji could understand her reaction. A golden core realm cultivator wiping the walls clean in a cave looked and sounded strange no matter how one looked at it. Perhaps the person behind him orchestrated this. The stranger the behavior, the more likely it is to have a deep meaning. Hong Yuye glanced at Baiji. Then, she picked up the crystal sphere. Baiji seemed to have thought about this and immediately voiced her opinion. The life core bead comes from the depths, but we don't know where it came from exactly. Whoever did it had the strength to set up a powerful formation. Logically, it wouldn't be easy to steal the life core bead. I have 3 guesses. 1, they intentionally released it to lure us in, but the probability of that is low, as we have already entered the sea fog cave. They could have attacked us anyway. 2, it's a warning to us that was passed via Jiang Hao's hands. Currently, there are no serious conflicts between us, so this is not impossible. 3, the people inside were unable to guard the life core bead, which confirms that they either lack strength or manpower. The previous arrangement has confirmed their strength, so the more likely one should be the latter. At the 100 Flowers Lake, under the pavilion, Hong Yuye raised her cup of tea after looking at the crystal sphere. This life core bead is linked to a certain person. Once activated, it can absorb and contain certain things. More importantly, if this thing is incomplete, it will be weaker. Baiji lowered her head. The first possibility could be ruled out. So, it was either the second or the third. This needed her to investigate further. The second could not be verified, so she needed to observe the abilities of the thieving sea monsters. If their abilities were indeed extraordinary, then the third possibility could be confirmed. But the situation still required finding the altar. How is the heavenly fragrance Dao flower doing? Hong Yuye handed the crystal sphere to Baiji. Jiang Hao has asked Xiao Li of the Cliff of Broken Hearts to take care of it in his absence. Its growth remains unaffected. This disciple is somewhat special, but we cannot trace her origins. Should we conduct a large-scale search? Baiji asked. I can confirm that she is not a spy or a traitor. No need. Hong Yuye shook her head. Baiji was not surprised. Apart from Jiang Hao, it seemed that none of the others needed special investigation. As long as they weren't spies or traitors, they could be left alone. Only Jiang Hao, who had been under suspicion all along and had no evidence against him, needed continuous investigation. The cooperation with the overseas people has brought some information about the overseas. We learned a lot about Feng Hua of the Great Thousand God Sect, Baiji said. According to their account, the Great Thousand God Sect has undercover elders. Their goal is to trade with others and then solicit and make connections. Feng Hua is most likely an undercover elder. There seems to be a way to find him, but it will take some time. Hong Yuye nodded. Anything else? After that, Baiji reported some matters regarding the end of all things, along with some things worth paying attention to. This included the royal family's marriage alliance. However, Hong Yuye did not say much about it. After Baiji left, the entire 100 Flowers Lake fell quiet once again. The only sound was that of the gentle breeze that rustled the flowers. Sitting in the pavilion, Hong Yuye picked up her teacup and took a sip. Her beautiful eyes moved as she stared in the direction of the sea fog cave. Deep inside the sea fog cave, there was an altar in the mist, and above it were 2 figures. The tentacles caused trouble. That is something we can't help. Their abilities have increased. I'll go and retrieve the item. T already sent someone, will have news soon. I don't know if it has fallen into the hands of the Heavenly Note sect. If it's with them, it will be difficult to get it back. Hopefully, it hasn't fallen into the hands of the higher-ups. I need to figure out an alternative. Prepare yourself for the worst. If the item falls into the hands of the higher-ups of the Heavenly Note sect, they will find this place easily. I'll make preparations. Zhuo Cheng came and went, and although Jiang Hao knew about it, he could only pretend not to know. As a Golden Core Realm cultivator, he couldn't possibly sense when someone like Zhuo Cheng arrived. Although others knew that he had a relatively keen perception, Zhuo Cheng was not an ordinary cultivator and couldn't be sensed just with a keen perception. So, continuing to wipe the wall was the best option for him right now. It was late February. Technically, they should be heading back to rest, but Jiang Hao had informed Zheng Shijiu that he was going to stay back. It seemed like the others were doing the same. They wanted to make more income with the ores. Jiang Hao also profited a bit but not by a lot. However, something was always better than nothing. After a few more days, Jiang Hao suddenly put down the cloth. He felt that something was approaching within the fog. It wasn't like the faint presence of the thieving sea monsters but something very strong. It was almost similar to his cultivation realm. It's coming from the direction of the thieving sea monsters. Although there are sect members there, none are at the soul ascension realm. After a moment of hesitation, Jiang Hao made a decision. He couldn't let whoever it was come here. If they were coming for the life core bead, everything here would be destroyed, and he might be forced to intervene. This would have a significant impact on him afterward. I need to figure out if stronger individuals will be coming. If they are. With a reluctant glance at the wall, Jiang Hao knew he might have to leave this place. Even though there were many bubbles here, it would be better to head back to the heavenly fragrance Dao flower in the face of danger. Jiang Hao sighed and walked out the door. His departure went unnoticed. The strongest here were only at the golden core realm. It was not easy to track the whereabouts of someone in the later stage of the soul ascension realm. Chapter 510. Chapter 510. Your plan has failed. Chapter 510. Your plan has failed. A man looked ahead from the sea fog. He saw a stronghold in the distance, and the trace of the life core bead was there, but it wasn't very noticeable. It meant that the life core bead had been transferred. The situation is worse than I expected. I wonder who they handed the life core bead to. If it was handed over to someone outside the cave, then I'll have to go back and report it. As for this stronghold, leaving a few survivors would suffice. He could clear out the rest. It would prevent the people here from leaking their information. First, I need to determine their strength. After sensing the people there, he suddenly paused. He took a step back, pulled out his spear, and faced the attack head-on. Clang! A strong impact dispersed the sea fog. Both sides retreated a bit. That was close. If I had discovered it a step later, I would have been heavily injured. The man holding the spear stood there in shock. Jiang Hao was surprised. He couldn't use his full strength if he wanted to remain discreet. But as someone who had mastered the Nameless Manual, how was he discovered by this person? His intention was to severely injure the person first and then ask questions later. Now, that seemed impossible, but it was still okay. The person was in the same realm as him. They were both in the late stage of the soul ascension realm. With the help of his divine abilities, he had a good chance of winning. It was a pity that this person was too sharp. Otherwise, he could have drawn him into the heavenly cauldron. How did you discover me? Jiang Hao asked in confusion. He wanted to assess the situation first. The man in front of him appeared to be in his early 30s and was dressed in the same white color as the sea fog. He had long hair which was tied up and was floating in the air. Jiang Hao had chosen to attack precisely because of his attire and demeanor. He was sure that this person wasn't someone from their sect or from the overseas group. How did you manage to conceal yourself? Tong Lu asked. It was unbelievable that there were people in the sea fog who could hide better than them. Both remained silent, and Jiang Hao knew that this person had no intention of answering his question. But that didn't matter. Sir, what are you doing here? Jiang Hao asked. Why are you stopping me? Tong Lu asked. Jiang Hao lowered his head and thought for a moment. In an instant, he felt movement from the person. It seemed like the opponent wanted to catch him off guard. Jiang Hao was prepared. His gaze shifted to the opponent. Divine might. A third eye opened within his primordial spirit. His power burst forth. Tong Lu, who was launching an attack, hesitated. He felt an invisible fire ignite within his primordial spirit, and pain spread throughout his body. This sudden attack shocked him. This person had broken through his primordial spirit defense in an instant. How could such strength be found in someone at the late stage of the soul ascension realm? He suppressed the pain with his strength. The meteor was like a shadow passing by him. At the same time, he evaded the attack, but one of his hands remained in place. Not even a drop of blood had fallen. How was this possible? In his astonishment, the meteor came again. Although he reacted again, his other hand remained in place. The meteors kept appearing, and Tonglu continued to evade. When he came to his senses, he found that he was already pinned to the wall by a spear. His limbs didn't obey him. This strange sensation terrified him. It must be the doing of the person in front of him. He was too fast. Late stage of the soul ascension realm. Are you kidding me? Thud. He fell to the ground. Jiang Hao appeared in front of Tonglu. Just kill me. Faced with such a powerful enemy, Tonglu despaired. Jiang Hao didn't attack him. Instead, he used his daily appraisal. Before, the sea fog had affected his vision. So, he had been unable to appraise the person. In order to ensure the successful theft of the royal clan's fortune, he is resolute and will not reveal any information. He has already begun to burn himself and is ready to drag you to the netherworld. Heavenly Cauldron. In an instant, Jiang Hao's divine power enveloped them. His hands were pressed against the opponent's head as he spoke in a deep voice. Tonglu. A member of the Heavenly Spirit tribe and a saint bandit. Here to steal the life core bead. I'm sorry, but it seems your plan has failed. Tonglu looked at Jiang Hao in disbelief. You. In the next moment, the Heavenly Cauldron enveloped everything. Boom. A powerful force shattered the divine power. At this moment, only Jiang Hao was where he had been before. He wasn't injured, but Tonglu was already gone. He had left nothing behind. Jiang Hao lowered his head and sighed. I thought saying those things would unsettle him and his aura, but it was of very little use. It's fortunate that I used my divine ability to envelop everything in the end. Otherwise, it would have been dangerous. Jiang Hao decided to clean up the surrounding area to avoid leaving any obvious traces. After that, he returned to the stone wall of the stronghold to continue wiping it. He could think about what had just happened while wiping the walls clean. When he wanted to find the cloth, he realized it was gone again. These thieving sea monsters are indeed extraordinary. Even though they are under our control now, they can still steal like this. He felt that a lot of the ores outside would be stolen soon. Shaking his head, he began to wipe the wall. At least now I know that the Saint Bandits awoke from the depths of the sea and are actually the Heavenly Spirit tribe. Everything before had been just speculation, but now, it was confirmed. One thing was certain, the life core bead was very important to them. The Heavenly Note sect would have decided to do something by now. If they send someone, it should be safe to stay here a little longer. If not, Jiang Hao made a decision. He would wait for 3 more days. If the Heavenly Note sect didn't send anyone in after 3 days, he would leave. Fortunately, when it was time to rest, he could leave for a few days and be more cautious afterward. Outside, Zheng Shizhou's group seemed to have sensed a powerful aura. They were nervous. However, nothing happened. It made everyone vigilant. They immediately sent someone out to inform the seniors. Jiang Hao continued to wait. Deep inside the sea fog cave, the man who had been arranging the personnel for the task suddenly froze. He looked solemn. What happened? The man next to him asked while preparing his backup plan. Tonglu is dead, said the other man. The man next to him paused for a moment. I see. It was only to be expected. After all, we were planning to go after them. Chapter 511. He might have caught the eye of a senior female cultivator. Chapter 511. He might have caught the eye of a senior female cultivator. In the sea fog, the two of them fell silent for a moment. The man who was preparing for a sneak attack suddenly said, Tonglu is dead, which means the Heavenly Note sect is on the move. We need to be careful. I understand. Since they want to come in, let them in. I'll make sure no one can return. The man in charge of arrangements nodded. Don't act recklessly, said the man who was preparing for a sneak attack. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I won't, said the man in charge of arrangements. The two fell silent again. The man preparing for a sneak attack knew that if they were at their wits' end, the person beside him would stop at nothing to find that person and avenge Tonglu. But being at their wits' end meant their plan had failed. How could the plan fail? Unless there was a major unexpected event in the Imperial City, it wouldn't fail. Even in the case of an unexpected event, They wouldn't leave empty-handed. They had been preparing for so long and had considered many possibilities. As people who had awakened from the depths, patience was something they had in abundance. In early March, Jiang Hao had been waiting at the outpost for 3 days. He sensed people heading deeper into the area one by one and bringing with them the sea patrol spirit beasts and thieving sea monsters. Their cultivation realms were all very high. It was even impossible to see through. Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. The arrival of such a powerful group of people meant that he was much safer. However, he couldn't let his guard down. Tonglu's death would definitely alert the people inside. The future was still uncertain. His immediate priority was to clean the walls. The dirt on these walls was unbelievably thick. It was almost like a new layer of wall. Luckily, there were bubbles. Half a month later, Jiang Hao noticed that his act of cleaning the walls had made progress. He got bubbles similar to the previous month. There were many white bubbles, quite a few green bubbles, and about 9 blue bubbles. It was twice as many as watering the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. During this half-month, there didn't seem to be any changes in the depths. At least there were no power fluctuations coming from there, or perhaps it was too far to sense. But the sea fog was surging, and he was keeping an eye on it. If there were any significant changes, he would be able to sense them. He would have to leave then. Suddenly, he felt something vibrate on his body. It was the stone tablet. "Are we going to have a gathering?" Out of curiosity, he put the cloth aside and secretly observed to see how the creatures would steal it. However, after waiting for a while, he didn't see any of the sea monsters making a move. After that, he didn't pay much attention to it. Tonight's meeting meant he needed to find a place to stay with Zheng Shijiu to avoid being disturbed. But as soon as he came out, he saw people in the mine talking in low voices. They were using secret techniques, and their voices were transmitted to his mind. "Look, the manager is out. He's been cleaning the walls for almost 2 months. What do you think he's here for? Isn't it obvious? He's here to clean the walls." The person asking the question was stunned for a moment, then he laughed. "I don't believe his group's claims. What secrets could there be in the walls? They're all just trying to deceive us. Perhaps a female senior has taken a fancy to him and asked him to come here to gain experience so that he can righteously make contributions. Didn't they chase the thieving sea monsters to earn merit before? Most likely, someone arranged it. What about the wall cleaning? It's just a smoke screen to make him appear special and to highlight his achievements. Whether it's the sect or us overseas, it's the same. You guys are just too young. You see something and believe it. There must be someone orchestrating all this just to make him stand out. So, you're saying he's just a pretty face? I don't think so. I don't think he's as handsome as me. What if some senior female just happens to like this type?" Jiang Hao didn't linger and didn't pay much attention to their thoughts. He couldn't stop or interfere with them. As long as it didn't cause him trouble, it was fine. He was afraid that someone would really believe he was cleaning the walls to reveal some secrets and would keep an eye on him. That would be the most troublesome. Once he left, someone might go in to explore. Once the secret was discovered, he wouldn't be able to clean the walls anymore. The Heavenly Note sect would definitely send someone to take over. The mine remained unclaimed because it was small and unremarkable. Those people turned a blind eye to it. But the secret that the walls could produce bubbles was definitely not simple. The Heavenly Note sect was not a good sect. Anything they set their eyes on would be theirs unless the other person was too strong to fight. So far, there was no one stronger than the Heavenly Note sect nearby. "Junior brother Jiang, aren't you cleaning the walls anymore?" Xin Yue was surprised to see Jiang Hao out. The others were also surprised. "Yeah. I'm taking a break for 2 days. Jiang Hao nodded. "Your room has already been arranged, and no one will disturb you," Zheng Shijiu said. "We'll seal off the walls on that side as well, so it won't affect your rest." Jiang Hao thanked them with a bow. They really had arranged everything for him. Doing sect missions with them was great. They didn't ask too many questions and took advice readily. After that, left and returned to his room and waited for midnight to arrive. This time, He needed to consider what questions he would face during the gathering. There shouldn't be anything major, but he had to inform the people in the Imperial City about the Saint Bandits. No matter what, the Saint Bandits were too closely related to him, and he couldn't let them grow stronger. Now was the time to turn his thoughts into action. If he let Gui take action, it would be a trade, and he would need to offer her something in return. He couldn't afford that. So, if they had a mission, then he could inform them of the situation. This way, he didn't have to pay them. Instead, he would receive a reward. It depended on whether they had something they needed. If not, he could only tell them about what he had seen. If no one cards, then he'll have to reconsider. Jiang Hao began to think about the best choice. Unknowingly, it was already midnight. The only solution he came up with was to complete tasks that others couldn't, such as those related to the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. There was indeed a solution, but the cost was too high. Jiang Hao shook his head and sighed. Let's see for now. After entering the public area, Jiang Hao arrived at his designated seat. Greetings, Senior Dan Yuan. The four of them bowed to Dan Yuan. After they were seated, Dan Yuan said, "Do you have any questions about your cultivation?" Gui hesitated but did not speak. Liu and Xing also didn't say anything. Jiang Hao remained as silent as ever. Then, "Do you have any information about the Saint Bandits?" Dan Yuan asked. "I saw signs of cooperation between the Saint Bandits and the royal family in the Imperial City," Gui said. "Oh." Dan Yuan was interested. "Do you have the details?" "I only saw some formations, and there's a certain probability that they were inviting talented youths," Gui said. She couldn't figure it out either. Although she had been paying attention recently, she hadn't conducted a thorough investigation. The royal family wouldn't cooperate with the Saint Bandits, at least not in stealing talents, said Jiang Hao suddenly. "Why?" Gui asked. Good question. Jiang Hao really thought Gui always asked the right questions. The more he answered at this stage, the more advantageous it was for him. If Gui didn't ask the relevant questions, he couldn't keep talking. Chapter 512, Gui gains a lot. Chapter 512, Gui gains a lot. Jiang Hao was not worried about Gui's questions. He had asked and received answers already. After a pause, he spoke in a low voice. The path taken by the royal family and the Saint Bandits are opposite unless the royal family abandons their own identity. Gui looked at Senior Dan Yuan. Xing and Liu were also the same. They weren't very familiar with this. That's true. The details are complicated. They can cooperate on other matters, but the royal family would never steal others' talents through the Saint Bandits. Dan Yuan nodded. Then, why are they cooperating? Gui was quite puzzled. Dan Yuan looked at Jiang Hao and smiled. Friend Jing, do you have the answer to that? Coincidentally, I overheard it, Jiang Hao said respectfully, but the information is from the Saint Bandit side. This surprised Gui. She thought this matter must have attracted Jing's attention. It's for the sake of the royal family's fortune and the land's blessing, said Jiang Hao in a deep voice. The statement surprised everyone. Jing's information is quite important. Once it's confirmed, I will inform you, Dan Yuan said with a smile. Jiang Hao understood that he might get a reward for this. He just didn't know what to ask about. Perhaps he could push a bit more regarding the task given by Hong Yuye. That was to find Feng Hua. But how exactly do the Saint Bandits steal the royal family's fortune? I've seen that formation, and it doesn't have that capability, Gui said curiously. Shangguan Hengyu, said Jiang Hao. Shangguan Hengyu? Liu was puzzled. Is there something special about this person? Don't ask me. I don't know. Jiang Hao lowered his head. I've heard about this person in the Imperial City. That family has a high status, Gui said. Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that someone had answered. The topic ended quickly. The matter with Saint Bandits was put aside for now. Dan Yuan didn't give out new tasks this time either. Some were happy, but some were worried. Jiang Hao felt that it was good because it reduced the possibility of his identity getting exposed. Gui, in turn, felt that obtaining the snow god pill was becoming more and more difficult. Next was the normal trading process. Friend Jing, I found the person that you mentioned, but he has escaped to another place again. Should I send another letter? Considering the valuable information you provided earlier, this time, I can include this letter with the previous rewards, Liu said to Jiang Hao. However, Jiang Hao shook his head. For now, that was enough. Kai Tian was obviously shaken. Moreover, letting him escape would give him some peace of mind, and he would collect information to ensure his safety this time. Having been found once, he could be located again. Kai Tian was not stupid. He would certainly prepare for this. Moreover, Liu seemed to already know where Kai Tian had escaped to, which made it even more convenient. Kai Tian had no escape. The curse is successful, but the effect may not be that good. I will curse a few more times in the future to try to improve the effect, Gui said. Jiang Hao nodded. Based on what he had learned before, Gui's curses required a large amount of spirit stones. Just thinking about it was painful. There have been sightings of tentacles again in the place under the sea, and they are becoming more frequent. The disciples of the Heavenly Note sect and people from overseas are still exploring deeper into the sea fog cave. So far, they have only found 2 types of creatures. The sea patrol spirit beasts, which can guide and search for missing people, and the sea monster thieves with exceptional theft abilities, Liu said to Senior Dan Yuan. This was his task. The Sea Fog Cave is the location where the preparation to seize the royal family's fortune is going on. There is an altar inside. Everyone was quite surprised at that. The distance between the Heavenly Note sect and the Imperial City was not small. The farther away the places, the greater the cost. What made them willing to expend so much effort for this? Dan Yuan lowered his head and thought about it. Gui, are you in the Imperial City? Yes. I have a task. The reward will be a method to transfer the entire curse from a body. Are you interested? Gui was overjoyed. She looked at Senior Dan Yuan and asked, what task is it? Prevent the Saint Bandits from seizing the royal family's fortune. To do that, you only need to find the relevant altar and use a special method to destroy it. Once successful, the task will be considered complete, and you will receive the reward, said Dan Yuan and smiled. What's the special method? Gui asked. Since they want to seize the fortune, let's give them a curse. However, during this time, you need to protect your own body. Can you handle this? Dan Yuan said with a smile. Gui nodded. For a moment, she felt she had gained a lot. As a member of the royal family, she would naturally not allow the Saint Bandits to succeed, and the curse had been bothering her for a while. She hadn't found a way to deal with it entirely. Now that everything was resolved, and she had even found the right person, all that was left was to take action. After discussing the task, they moved on to discuss other matters. Do you still remember Disciple Shongen? I heard that he intended to go out, but unfortunately, his master refused. He can't go out until he breaks through to the Immortal Ascension platform, Xing said. I also heard that he can break through to the Immortal Ascension platform anytime now, but he just won't take that step. Moreover, once he reaches it, he retreats immediately, which has infuriated his master. Jiang Hao wasn't surprised. In the corpse realm, Shongen had the ability to advance beyond the Soul Ascension realm. It's just that at that time, he had followed the path of forgetfulness. Now that he had joined the Clear Sky School, he probably wouldn't have to go through the path of forgetfulness anymore. He wouldn't take that step because it probably had something to do with the charm goddess. Jiang Hao truly didn't understand that kind of affection. He only felt like cutting her down whenever he looked at the charm goddess. Perhaps he would never have romance in his life. If he did. In Jiang Hao's mind, a breathtakingly beautiful face appeared. The poison in his body only made him think of her. Other women were nothing to him. Has he broken through then? Gui asked. Shongen was an extraordinary genius. He was already at the Soul Ascension realm for years now. According to their speculations, even the one with the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment realm would take longer to reach the Soul Ascension realm. Both were extraordinary people. In usual cases, Cultivators who could reach the soul ascension realm would take several hundred to even over 1,000 years to do it. No. He mentioned he'll go on a journey for a few years and upon returning, he'll follow his master's command, Xing said. Going out? Jiang Hao wondered whether the corpse realm was about to open again. Otherwise, why would Shongan leave? However, there was no sign of the corpse realm opening anytime soon. If it did, people from the Divine Corpse sect would have already arrived. Lately, there is some unrest overseas. Leaving aside the matters related to the sea depth, it seems the end of all things is about to begin their sacrifices again. Last time, it was for the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. What could it be this time? Liu felt helpless. It seemed to greatly affect him. Meanwhile, Jiang Hao lowered his head and thought that they probably were still looking for the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. He needed to be careful. He didn't want suspicious powers entering his dreams again. On the other hand, he could take advantage of that and find the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. After chatting for a while longer, the gathering ended, and they left the forum. Just as he opened his eyes, he found a figure in red and white sitting in front of him and drinking tea. Jiang Hao was speechless. It was Hong Yuye. Cultivator beside a Demoness. Chapter 513, asking about the sect master's cultivation realm. Chapter 513, asking about the sect master's cultivation realm. At the imperial city, in the courtyard, Baizhu opened her eyes and looked at the bright moon outside the window. The moonlight was like a white frost illuminating her bed. She sat up and then walked outside. As she moved, the surrounding formations began to disappear. These were the precautions that she had put into effect, just in case. Even entering the gathering was somewhat dangerous. She didn't want to be caught off guard. Proper preparation was essential. The doors and windows had hidden curses. If one's cultivation was insufficient, one would turn into puddles of blood in an instant. Creak. At this moment, Qiao Yi, who was guarding the courtyard, looked over. Hey, Qiao Yi, aren't you going to rest? Baizhu was surprised to see her. All the princesses and princes have returned and brought back many people along. I was worried that someone might pester you, so I stayed here, Qiao Yi said. You always work so hard, Qiao Yi, Baizhu said with a smile. Thank you. Not at all. It would be even better if you were willing to work harder, princess, Qiao Yi whispered. I always work very hard, Baizhu said stubbornly. Qiao Yi didn't say much. She was curious why the princess was up so late. What's the matter? Qiao Yi asked. Baizhu's eyes flickered. What was the name of the Shangguan family's heir? Shangguan Hengyu. Shangguan Hengyu, Baizhu said with a sly smile. Why do you ask about him so suddenly, princess? Qiao Yi was puzzled. Normally, the princess wouldn't care about such things. She couldn't sleep and was suddenly asking about him. Something was strange. I think that person might not be so simple. I plan to meet him, Baizhu said as she rested her chin on her hand on the stone table. Qiao Yi sighed. She felt that the princess was going to give her a headache again. When she was in her 20s, the princess was already quite mischievous. Later, in her hundreds, she matured a lot. Now in her 300s, she barely interacted with others. Was she feeling nostalgic for her childhood? It's fine if you want to meet him. But you should be careful. The people from the Shangguan family shouldn't be provoked, especially considering your age. There aren't many people looking out for you, Qiao Yi said. All right. If General Lin comes again, we'll go along with the flow, said Baizhu. She got up from the table. The gathering is over. Hong Yuye looked at the man in front of her. Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. He originally wanted to take out the notebook and write things down, but he didn't want to do that now. Hong Yuye's sudden appearance made him a bit worried. Normally, she only visited him a few days after the sect mission was over. He realized that he should have gone back to check on the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. But he gave up on that. What if something had happened, and she blamed him for it? He couldn't bear that terrifying aura. Are you nervous? Hong Yuye squinted her eyes. Jiang Hao stood up. Senior, meeting you here is indeed nerve-wracking. I'm worried that the environment here might not be suitable for you. Hong Yuye chuckled. Jiang Hao dared not say anything more. He remained silent. Fortunately, she didn't mention the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. Otherwise, he didn't know how to explain the situation. What about the records? Hong Yuye asked. I haven't written it down yet, Jiang Hao said. Then, what are you waiting for? Hong Yuye asked. Jiang Hao took out the book, sat across from Hong Yuye, and wrote down key points from the gathering. Before writing, he recalled the details of the gathering. He had gotten some of the information from appraisals, and they needed to be sorted out. It's impossible for the royal family to cooperate with the Saint Bandits, so the Saint Bandits might be planning to seize the royal family's fortune and the blessing of the land. A key figure in this was Shangguan Hengyu. Kai Tian has escaped again, but it seems his location is known. Not necessary to worry about it for now. The Saint Bandits' plan to seize the fortune might start from the Sea Fog Cave. Senior Dan Yuan realized something, so he asked Gui to destroy their altar in the Imperial City. The end of all things might start searching for the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl again. After finishing it, Jiang Hao put down his pen. That should be all. The matter of Shang wasn't worth mentioning, so he didn't write it down. Later, he would inform Hong Yuye about it in passing. He saw Hong Yuye looking down at his notebook. He pushed the book toward her. Senior, please take a look. Tell me about the gathering, Hong Yuye said softly. Jiang Hao briefly summarized what had happened at the gathering. Hong Yuye didn't say a word throughout the whole process. She seemed uninterested in all of this. However, she asked a few questions about Shang and possibly looking for the charm goddess. Deeply infatuated with her? There are many such people. I wonder if he's considered the most special among them. Probably. Why? Shang'an is an extraordinary genius, and such people are rare. Hong Yuye closed the book, sipped her tea, and said, Heavenly Steely Mountain called for you, didn't it? As an extraordinary genius yourself, what do you think of the charm goddess? Not as good as a single strand of your hair, senior, Jiang Hao said. He could be ready to slay the charm goddess at any moment, but he couldn't harm even a single strand of Hong Yuye's hair. Hong Yuye's hand, which was holding the teacup, paused for a moment, and she looked at him. Do you like cleaning walls so much? She asked. Senior, you jest. It's just that the wall seemed a bit dirty, so I wiped it, Jiang Hao said with his head lowered. In front of this woman, he would not go and clean any walls. Hong Yuye chuckled but didn't say much. I have a question, Jiang Hao said as he looked at her. She only gave him a cursory glance. What is it? What is the Immortal Ascension platform? This question had been on Jiang Hao's mind for a long time. He didn't dare ask it during the gathering because it didn't fit the impression of himself that he wanted to leave behind. He didn't dare investigate within the sect either. He feared someone might find him suspicious. You, a Golden Core Realm cultivator, want to know about the Immortal Ascension platform? Isn't that too early? Hong Yuye said. Indeed, it was too early. That's why Jiang Hao didn't dare to ask or investigate within the sect. The Onlv der Sun he could ask was the woman in front of him. He had many secrets, and she knew most of them. It's for the gathering. They often mention the Immortal Ascension platform, and I know nothing about it. In case I expose myself, it might affect my undercover mission, Jiang Hao said earnestly. In reality, it wouldn't come to that, because he could just remain silent. Hong Yuye looked at him with mockery in her eyes. Do you know all the cultivation realms? Lifeblood Refinement Realm, Foundation Establishment Realm, Golden Core Realm, Primordial Spirit Realm, Soul Ascension Realm, and Return to Void Realm, said Jiang Hao. Beyond that, I don't know. Chem, Hong Yuye thought for a moment. Your acting sect master is at the Immortal Ascension platform. Elder Baiji? Jiang Hao was shocked. Is Shang'an that strong? What about our sect master? Jiang Hao asked curiously. Chapter 514, Chapter 514, Should I dirty the Demoness? Chapter 514, Should I dirty the Demoness? Elder Baiji was on the Immortal Ascension platform, the sect master should be on an even higher realm, or perhaps she was also on the immortal ascension platform. Of course, she might have died in seclusion. That was also a possibility. Many masters were like that. They would go into seclusion for decades or even hundreds of years. When a crisis arrived and the sect turned to their sect master, they would be horrified to find out that their sect master had died decades ago. They were, more or less, living only in their people's imagination and expectations. The sect master of your sect. Hong Yuye chuckled. Summon her out and let me take a look. Then, you'll be able to tell you about her cultivation realm. Jiang Hao was speechless. He hadn't even seen her. How could he summon her? If he made such a request to the sect, he would probably be killed. But he did feel that Hong Yuye might be stronger. It was just a feeling. Whether it was in the southern or eastern regions, she remained so composed. It seemed nothing in the world could faze her. Having such a terrifying presence by his side was a stroke of luck for him, because as long as she had a need for him, he would most likely survive every ordeal. But precisely because of that, she had become an insurmountable disaster in his life. Once she wanted him dead, nothing could stop it. He needed to be cautious. So, how can one advance to the immortal ascension platform? Jiang Hao asked. The sect master's realm was too high, and he knew very little about it. How much do you know about the soul ascension realm? Hong Yuye asked. Tempering the soul to its limit, Jiang Hao said. What about the return to void realm? The spirit can freely traverse the void. Its movement is unaffected and fluid and possesses the power of nothingness. Hong Yuye nodded. Beyond soul ascension is the realm where the spirit delves into the depths of nothingness. Both strength and body are tempered by nothingness and will begin to transform. That is the beginning of becoming a true immortal. That is called immortal ascension. This was the first time Jiang Hao had heard about the realm beyond return to void realm. What about beyond immortal ascension? Beyond that. Hong Yuye sipped her tea and seemed to be deep in thought. If your ascension is successful, you will reach 9 steps that you'll have to complete. These 9 stages are unlike anything else you have done before. The immortal ascension platform is the 9th stage, which is different from the other steps. It is elusive and difficult to reach. It's not something that can be achieved through effort alone. It's exceptionally difficult. There is a huge difference between being on the immortal ascension platform and not being on it. Only by reaching the immortal ascension platform do you qualify to become an immortal. After thinking for a moment, Jiang Hao realized that he was quite far from Elder Baiji's realm. If Elder Baiji was like that, how strong was Hong Yuye? He felt that escaping the clutches of the demonic sect was a distant goal. But he could wait. A few decades or even a few hundred years wouldn't matter. One day, he would surpass everyone. Suddenly, he remembered the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. How long does it take to reach the immortal ascension platform after obtaining the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment? Less than 150 years. It can be said to be the fastest in the current world. Hong Yuye glanced at him. Then, she continued drinking her tea. Jiang Hao sighed. Chu Jie's speed of advancement was so fast. How could Chu Chuan ever catch up? If she reached the primordial spirit realm in her 20s, he would still be at the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. However, there was still hope. Someone being at the late stage of the foundation establishment realm at 20 was still remarkable. Jiang Hao suddenly thought of Zhuang Yuzhen. He seemed to be completely unafraid of Elder Baiji. Did that mean he had already broken through the immortal ascension platform? He was shocked. It turned out that even Zhuang Yuzhen was extremely powerful. It was no wonder he had come to the Heavenly Note sect as though it was a simple courtyard at someone's house. The Divine Corpse sect was indeed a major sect. What happens after breaking through the immortal ascension platform? Jiang Hao asked. This time, Hong Yuye did not answer his question. What's your cultivation realm? Early stage of the Golden Core realm, said Jiang Hao. You're aiming too high. Ask me after you reach Soul Ascension realm, said Hong Yuye with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Jiang Hao could only bow his head and remain silent. Indeed, He was aiming too high. The cultivation path had to be taken step by step. As long as he reached the immortal ascension, began the transformation, and ascended the immortal ascension platform, he wouldn't need to ask too many questions. However, before that, he needed to understand his current self and refine his realm. Right now, he was inferior to even the top 5 disciples of the sect, let alone the elders. Focusing on cultivation was the most important thing. At this moment, Hong Yuye stood up and looked out of the window. "You said you saw a figure there," she asked. "Yes, it was very blurry, but I did see someone." Jiang Hao also walked to the window. He had told her what had happened to him. Now that Hong Yuye was here, he wasn't worried about danger. But she wouldn't stay for long, so he still needed to rely on his own abilities. "Do you know what's sealed here?" Jiang Hao asked. "There are taboos," Hong Yuye said. "Was it sealed by someone?" Jiang Hao asked again. Hong Yuye did not answer. It seemed she didn't know much about the place either. Compared to things like the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl, the Saint Bandits weren't that dangerous. No matter what they stole, ordinary people could still live their lives as they always did. Once the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl erupted and no one intervened, everything would be affected. Once misfortune tainted the heavens and the earth, the entire expanse would become a part of the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl. "Which form did you reach for the Heavenly Blade?" Hong Yuye asked. "The 4th form," Jiang Hao said. He had comprehended the no regrets technique but had not been able to unleash its full power. It couldn't be utilized just like that. It was only made to be used in desperate situations. It was an all-or-nothing kind of move. "What have you been doing here these days?" Hong Yuye asked. "I've been thinking about how to complete your task, senior." Hong Yuye sneered. "Thinking about it? What about acting on it?" "I've been cleaning up this place to prevent you from dirtying your clothes, senior," Jiang Hao said with a bow. "Why does it matter if it gets dirty?" Hong Yuye lifted her red and white dress slightly and looked at him. Jiang Hao hesitated for a moment. "You like cleaning things. Why don't I see you cleaning yourself?" Hong Yuye asked. "Huh?" Jiang Hao was puzzled. Cleaning himself wouldn't fetch him bubbles. His thoughts began to wander. He wondered if cleaning a powerful expert would give him bubbles. Suddenly, Hong Yuye's image flashed in his mind. If that were true, he would have discovered it when he was 19. Perhaps she was just too clean and didn't need cleaning up. What if he were to get her dirty? "What are you thinking?" Hong Yuye asked. Jiang Hao was startled. "I'm thinking about the tasks you entrusted to me and planning the next steps, senior," he said hurriedly. "The tasks I entrusted to you?" Hong Yuye smiled slyly. "Didn't I entrust you with the task of taking care of my flower? What about that? You let that little dragon do it instead." Jiang Hao was speechless. "I didn't see her having any problem when the spirit beast did it." Chapter 515, Heaven Lock. Chapter 515, Heaven Lock. Bam! Jiang Hao slammed heavily against the wall. He was punished because he hadn't been taking care of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. Although the impact was much smaller than when he had seen her in the bathroom last time, it still was a testament to her mood swings. One had to be cautious around powerful experts. "I'll spare you this time, but you won't be so lucky next time." Hong Yuye glared at him. "Just continue with your cleaning the walls. In the future, you might not get a chance to do so." Jiang Hao followed her with his gaze as she disappeared. Although he took a hit, it was still okay. There was no need to worry about it. Now that Hong Yuye had told him to clean the wall, he would be just following orders. Later, after a short rest and once his state returned to its peak, he left the room and returned to the wall. Without a doubt, the cloth that had been put aside had disappeared once again. Curious, he looked for the thieving sea creature. He wanted to see which sea creature had been stealing from him. Soon, he found a relatively young thieving sea creature. Its tentacles were quite slender, but it clutched 3 pieces of cloth. Although it tried to hide, it couldn't escape Jiang Hao's sight. Upon seeing someone approaching, it became somewhat nervous and instinctively retreated. "How did you steal them?" Jiang Hao asked. The thieving sea creature, with 3 eyes, looked at Jiang Hao in fear. Yet, it looked determined to defend itself. Seeing it remained silent, Jiang Hao hesitated for a moment and activated his divine ability to appraise it. Jiang Hao was surprised that a sea creature had such principles. But how long could this kind of thinking last? It might be just feeling this way because it was a captive. Once it was set free, it might not care about repaying favors. Kai Tian was a living example of that. He had even changed his whole identity just to get away. Humans couldn't be trusted, and sea creatures were somewhat similar. Ajah named it. I didn't expect it to accept the name so readily. Only when the creature accepted it would the name be permanent. After hesitating for a moment, he picked up a Kong and walked out. He met no one along the way, not even the miners. Kong looked at the human and trembled in fear. It knew it was going to die today. When the human reached the open space outside, he brandished a knife. Clang! Kong knew it was going to die. But, after a while, it felt its bindings loosen. Then, it shockingly discovered that it was free. It looked at the person in front of it in disbelief. Why? It asked. Just go. Jiang Hao stored away his knife and turned to leave. Letting a thieving sea creature go wasn't a big deal. It was a small gamble. At most, he would lose a captive sea monster. Or, if it kept its end of the bargain, he might gain a lot. Anyhow, after this, he wouldn't lose any more rags. Kong stared at him for a while, then it entered the misty fog in gratitude and disappeared completely. At noon, Zheng Shijiu came to find him. He said that a thieving sea creature had disappeared. Oh! Jiang Hao's indifferent attitude surprised Zheng Shijiu. Then, Zheng Shijiu asked if he needed him to act on it. Jiang Hao told him to do as he saw fit. Zheng Shijiu never paid attention to the matter again, and naturally, others didn't care either. This matter did not cause a big commotion. Instead, Jiang Hao going back in to clean the wall did cause some fuss. It lasted from mid-March until the end of May. A full 4 months. They mined for 4 months, while their manager did nothing but clean the wall for 4 months. It was unbelievable. Jiang Hao looked at the wall. His cleaning was about to end. Once it was done, only the last layer would remain. For such a thin layer of dirt, he didn't need to clean for long. He decided to do it slowly. If others found out, they would be curious and come to check it out. Despite the constant mockery from the people outside, each of them was curious about this wall. They all wanted to come and clean it to see what was so captivating about it. After a few days, in early June, Jiang Hao had cleaned all of it. Only a last layer of dirt remained. If he cleaned it, the secret of the wall would be revealed. He looked and perceived his surroundings using his senses. He made sure that no one was approaching and that the fog wasn't shifting. Then, he continued to clean. For these few months, he hadn't noticed any changes in his surroundings. He still remembered the waves caused by Tonglu's explosion. Whenever there was a fight, these waves would spread. He took a deep breath and started cleaning the stains on the wall. If his guess was correct, many people would be alerted by this. There might also be a few extra bubbles. However, the sect wouldn't trouble him for mere bubbles. It was different with the Saint Bandit. They would likely target him. He didn't care. He was already being targeted by too many people anyway. One more wouldn't matter. Well, nothing seems amiss in the surroundings. The seniors of the Lawless Tower might arrive soon to check this. Now is the best time to do it. After calming himself down, Jiang Hao started to clean the topmost part of the wall. The words emerged. 2 words written in the language of the Heavenly Spirit tribe. A faint light emanated from the words engraved on the wall. Jiang Hao read them out loud, Heaven Lock. Without pausing, he moved to the leftmost part and started cleaning from top to bottom. Blue bubbles fell once again. Some more words appeared. If I don't die, the great thief will live forever. The light gradually bloomed, and the aura spread with it. The light surged as if it had waited countless years to burst forth. Without hesitation, Jiang Hao continued to clean. As he cleaned, more bubbles fell. There was always a blue bubble. Outside, Zhang Shijiu and others stood in their positions and waited for the sect's people to come and inspect the area. They hadn't left this place in a while, and everyone was curious. When the seniors from the sect arrived, they turned a blind eye to their mining activities. This allowed them to harvest quite a bit of ore, which they later sold for a considerable amount of spirit stones. Of course, for safety reasons, they received very little. The vast majority was saved to be handed over to the sect. It's been over 4 months. Hasn't that wall been cleaned enough? Said Xiao Xiaohui as she looked in the direction where Jiang Hao was. Others agreed with her. Zheng Shijiu, who had gone inside a few times, had seen the wall. It was pretty clear by now. It was almost as smooth as a bald head. I wonder how much longer junior brother Jiang will continue cleaning. Xin Yu sighed. Yu shook her head. Now everyone says that the manager is just putting on a show. Go and listen. They all gossip about it, said a bald golden core realm cultivator. Chapter 516, Chapter 516, Revelation of the Secret. Chapter 516, Revelation of the Secret. Zhang Shijiu and others looked at the miners resting on the side. They were whispering. The group tried to listen to what they were whispering about. At that moment, Xiao Xiaohui took out a magical treasure and heard the conversation. The last time the sect members came, the manager was still cleaning the walls. Do you think it will be the same as last time? Probably. The manager will be praised for his hard work in cleaning the walls. I don't think so. This time, the manager should come out and talk about what he has found out this time. Then, people will nod and praise him, and then immediately accept this big secret, and no one will be allowed to approach. For a moment, I also wanted to be noticed by some senior female disciple. Who do you think it might be? However, the others didn't dare to chime in. They were on guard because it could mean death if a senior female disciple heard it. Soon, they changed the topic. What do you think the manager will uncover in the end? I really want to see it. Several people echoed their agreement. But each person was somewhat mocking as if they were just watching a joke. Zheng Shijiu and the others listened to them and sighed. They didn't dare to let Jiang Hao hear such words. They were also puzzled and didn't know when this would come to an end. Xin Yue sensed a glint of light from the corner of her eye. Where is the light coming from? Light? What light? Xiao Xiaohui asked. It's from junior brother Jiang, Yu immediately said. Then, the group looked in the direction of Jiang Hao. That place was sealed by a wall, but there was an entrance, and the light was coming from that place. What's going on? Zheng Shijiu looked puzzled. The light was too conspicuous at this moment, and the group of miners noticed it. They exclaimed. Did you see the light? The secret is revealed. Their voices were tinged with amusement, as if saying, watch him perform. However, Zheng Shijiu, Xiao Xiaohui, and the bald golden core realm cultivator stepped back instinctively. What's wrong? Xin Yue asked. No, this light is not right, Xiao Xiaohui said cautiously. Yes, I have that feeling too, a kind of inexplicable palpitation. It's like a fierce beast, ready to pounce at any moment, Zheng Shijiu said. They kept stepping back as they spoke. Xin Yue and Yu were puzzled but still followed suit. After all, just a moment ago, the 3 golden core realm cultivators had retreated together. It was instinctive. There was indeed something wrong with the light. What happened inside? The 5 people wondered. Looking at the doorway, they saw the light gradually brightening. It seemed to occupy the space inside. Xin Yue and Yu also felt something. As for the miners, their cultivation levels varied, and some of them sensed something, but many still remained motionless. They just saw some people retreating and were a bit puzzled. What are you doing? Cooperating with the manager? Really? No. Haven't you noticed? Noticed what? The light. The light. What's wrong with the light? The retreating individuals broke into a cold sweat. It's like a ferocious monster. This confused the others. At this moment, it seemed like the light was occupying the space inside and was seemingly trying to squeeze out. If it couldn't squeeze out, it would break through the walls. Crack. Suddenly, the wall began to crack, and light started pouring out from inside. It seemed to be squeezing out of the narrow space. This made the crowd apprehensive. The light seemed to be twisting as it came out. It didn't shine like a light was supposed to. At that moment, everyone involuntarily stepped back in fear. Is the manager playing a joke on us? Someone activated their defenses. Crack. Rocks started falling, and the light was about to break through the wall completely. As everyone was retreating, a loud roar echoed. Boom. The entire wall shattered, and the confined light began to shine fully. Everyone present was illuminated by the light, and for a moment, those under the light stood still, as if completely suppressed by something terrifying. Fear began to spread in their hearts. There was a figure in front. He stood under the wall and was still wiping it. Every wipe would make the light brighter, and the pressure would increase. They vaguely saw many inscriptions appearing on the wall, which they couldn't understand, but it carried a terrifying aura. Everyone was stunned. So, there really was a secret in the wall. The person who had wanted to see the secret regretted it. He didn't want to see it anymore. Just a glance at this secret brought an unparalleled terror. If it continued, they didn't know what might happen to them. Zhang Shijiu and the others felt it even more clearly. As they watched the light become stronger, they wanted to ask Jiang how to stop, but they couldn't utter a word. They could only watch him wipe the wall as the secret unfolded. As the light appeared, the surrounding sea fog began to swirl, and the light penetrated through the sea fog outside. The first person, Zhuo Cheng, who was on the road. He sensed the presence of the light, and he was extremely shocked. Where did that light come from? He immediately ordered someone to report back and went to check it himself. However, the person who left was not faster than the light. Outside the sea fog cave, a burst of light shot out. Then, it rose into the sky. The two ordinary disciples who were walking on the road were stunned. Heaven Lock. How is this possible? Who discovered it? The Heaven Lock. This is a big problem. No, not necessarily. Heaven Lock was inscribed by that person himself, and not everyone can view it. I just don't understand how someone could discover Heaven Lock. Do you want to go and take a look? While they were still hesitating, a white figure headed toward the sea fog cave. It was Elder Baiji. The moment they saw her, the two could only choose to give up. The top elder of the Heavenly Note sect had already realized the situation. It would be dangerous for them to go. At this moment, Baiji was shocked. What exactly had happened in the sea fog cave to cause such a change? At the same time, Jiang Hao wiped away the last bit of dirt. This was probably the last of the gains. He looked at these inscriptions and understood them roughly. This made him sigh. This person is truly talented. The so-called Heaven Lock didn't mean locking the heavens but locking one's innate talent. This person believed that the total amount of innate talent obtained by each race remains constant. To gain more innate talent and to break free from racial restrictions, one must lock the innate talent of other races and transfer it. Chapter 517, Remembering the Heaven Lock Technique. Chapter 517, Remembering the Heaven Lock Technique. Jiang Hao was shocked at the inscriptions on the wall. Although he recognized many of the words on it, there were still many things he couldn't understand. However, he could vaguely comprehend the Heaven Lock Technique. This person is truly an extraordinary genius. The theory and the technique are simply unimaginable. But Jiang Hao didn't understand. Was it really possible? If someone's talent was locked, could others then obtain that talent? If someday the Heaven Lock technique was unraveled, would the talent revert to its previous place or person? There were too many questions. I wonder what the original intention of the person who created this technique was. If it was simply to achieve a higher realm, this wasn't needed. As Hong Yuye said, talent could only represent a part of the person. How far one could go depended on oneself. A person who could create such a technique must have walked a long and difficult path and didn't need to cultivate talent themselves. Perhaps they needed something else. There was a loud sigh. Jiang Hao was taken aback for a moment. He looked away from the wall. From the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing beside him. His heart dropped, and he quickly turned to look. He was sure he had seen someone there, but, in the next moment, the figure disappeared. It was at this moment that the light ahead exerted pressure and made it difficult for him to move. He instinctively wanted to activate the Hong Meng Heart Sutra to resist it, but soon gave up on the idea. At that time, no matter how he explained it, it would be useless. For now, he could only act like a golden core realm cultivator and resist the pressure with the 100 revolutions of the heavenly note. The terrifying pressure made him bend down. But he did not collapse. He persevered. He knew that it wouldn't be long before the sect's powerful individuals were here. Sure enough, a white figure appeared. She unfolded a treasure that looked like white cloth and covered the entire wall. The light dissipated, and the pressure suddenly disappeared. Move aside. No one is allowed to leave from here. The stern voice of Elder Baiji echoed. In an instant, Jiang Hao felt his body return to normal. He then stepped back. After retreating, he saw that senior brother Zheng and the others were already lying on the ground. Whether it was Foundation Establishment or Golden Core Realm, they couldn't bear the pressure. And they struggled to get up and followed Jiang Hao as he retreated. They all looked at their manager with a strange look in their eyes. No one dared to mock him anymore. What had just unfolded had left them baffled. Zheng Shijiu and others were astonished. The reasons they had casually come up with as an excuse had actually come true. Step back. Stand behind me. Zhuo Cheng had also arrived. The light had made him fearful. He saw the light and glimpsed the contents of the wall. However, in the blink of an eye, he felt a roaring sensation in his brain and couldn't look directly at it. Fortunately, Elder Baiji had arrived. When they retreated far enough, Zhuo Cheng turned to look at Jiang Hao. Cleaning the wall, unexpectedly cleaning out something so terrifying. He felt somewhat fortunate that he had reported him cleaning the walls before. Otherwise, something as important as this would have gone unreported. That would have been his negligence on his part. Although he really wanted to ask Jiang Hao about it, this wasn't the right time. Moreover, Elder Baiji would definitely ask him. Now, they just needed to wait patiently. The commotion was beyond his expectations, but fortunately, nothing unusual happened. Except for some bubbles, Jiang Hao hadn't done anything impactful. In these 4 months of effort, his cultivation and lifeblood had increased significantly. While waiting for Elder Baiji, he glanced at his interface. He had reached 60. He only had a few points when he arrived, but now, he had over 60. 4 months here were equivalent to more than a year of cultivating divine flowers. Not only that, but he had also obtained more than a year's worth of white and green bubbles. He even had quite a few spirit swords. When the time came, he could sell them again. Now, he was less than 40 points away from advancement. If everything went smoothly, he would reach the peak of the Soul Ascension realm by the end of the year. He would then surpass senior brother Bai Yi. The only regret was that the wall in the Sea Fog Cave wouldn't produce something of the same quality as Heaven Lock anymore. Even though there were records, it couldn't compare to the content of Heaven Lock. It was truly extraordinary. Regarding the part of the Heaven Lock content, he couldn't understand it, but he could remember the Heaven Lock technique. After going back, he would spend some time trying to find out more about it. If one could lock someone's talent at will, then it would be a disaster for the entire cultivation world. It was understandable why people wanted the sacred bandits gone. After that, they waited in place for Elder Baiji. After a long time, the white cloth on the wall disappeared. Elder Baiji appeared before them. It disappeared, someone whispered, the content on the wall has disappeared. At this point, the crowd noticed that after the white cloth was removed, all the words had vanished. However, the previous scene was imprinted in their minds. If they hadn't witnessed the scene of the golden light blossoming, they might have thought that it was a trick of their eyes. Someone would arrive and praise the efforts of the Foundation Establishment Realm Cultivator. But now, they couldn't possibly tell themselves that everything had just been an illusion. Not after this. Greetings, Sect Master. Jiang Hao and the others bowed respectfully. The acting sect master was the sect master for all intents and purposes. Jiang Hao addressed her that way, and others followed suit. Baiji didn't mind. They could either call her elder or sect master. Who discovered the thing on the wall? She asked. It was me, Jiang Hao respectfully said. Come with me. Baiji instructed Zhuo Cheng to ask the others for details. They arrived at the wall. Tell me about the appearance of the light, said Baiji calmly. She didn't ask him why he was cleaning the wall because she knew he wouldn't tell her the truth. When the words were wiped out, a light appeared, Jiang Hao said truthfully. And then? Baiji asked. I just continued wiping, and more words appeared, said Jiang Hao. Baiji's face remained unchanged. Did you feel anything during that time? I didn't feel anything. Just, Jiang Hao hesitated. Just. Baiji pressed. After wiping it, I thought I heard a sigh. It felt like someone was standing beside me. But when I turned to look, I found no one there. At that moment, the pressure from the light was so immense that I couldn't even stand upright. After that, you arrived, Elder Baiji. Jiang Hao did not hide anything. All of what he said was known to everyone here. Chapter 518. Chapter 518. He showed Night care about my age. Chapter 518. He showed Night care about my age. At the sea fog cave, Jiang Hao was still standing beneath the wall. But Elder Baiji had already left. After understanding what had happened here, she did not linger. Zhuo Cheng, on the other hand, stayed for a long time. He wanted to understand the situation in detail before going back to report. Before Zhuo Cheng left, Jiang Hao asked him about what would happen next. The answer he got was to wait for information. In other words, they should just continue mining here. This was really good news, at least for him. However, the appearance of Heaven Lock would definitely cause a series of changes, and he needed to be careful in how he handled them. There weren't many people who knew that Heaven Lock originated from here. As long as Elder Baiji and the others didn't disclose the information, the people present here would be safe. It's just that he didn't know how the people from the Saint Bandits would respond. Jiang Hao was once again the manager here. The others didn't look at him mockingly anymore. Especially under the light, they had seen Jiang Hao stand there like a hero and gazing at the wall. Let's first repair the surroundings, Jiang Hao said. Many things here were broken by the light, and it wouldn't be good to continue mining without fixing them. After spending the whole night repairing the damage, everything was done. All that was left was to mine. Elder Baiji had seen the ores, but she didn't ask any questions, which meant they didn't need to worry too much about mining secretly. Junior brother Jiang, are you going to mine? Zheng Shijiu and the others were shocked. Xin Yuyue hesitated. Could it be that there's a secret in the mine as well? Everyone was concerned about this. There was a secret on the wall, so did mining now mean that it also harbored unknown dangers? After all, no one wanted to go through what had happened yesterday. The terrifying aura made everyone feel powerless. Not really. Jiang Hao shook his head. He just wanted to mine. There was no secret. Others only half believed him. In the end, they could only let Jiang Hao go into the cave to mine, but many people observed him. A day passed. Is everything okay? Xiao Xiaohui asked in concern. At the moment, there's no problem, but Zheng Shijiu was puzzled. But what? Yu curiously asked. Jiang junior brother seems unusually focused on it, Zheng Shijiu said. Much more focused than an ordinary person would be. Could it be that your junior brother is trying to find something good in the mine? The bald golden core realm cultivator asked. Others thought this was the most likely possibility. 2 days passed, and they still didn't see anything strange happen. 5 days passed, and everyone was now getting used to it. There was just one question that puzzled everyone. Why wasn't the manager taking a break? If the manager didn't rest, they didn't dare to stop either. For a while, everyone felt bitter. In fact, Jiang Hao was also helpless. He found that mining here was far less comfortable than mining in the corpse realm. The bubbles were not like the ores. He felt uneasy because he was in charge here, and every move he made would inadvertently lead to opinions from others. They would look at him and judge him. It was more convenient to be an ordinary disciple than a leader. He sighed and took a break so that the others could rest too. In 5 days, he had obtained 2 blue bubbles. It was not as efficient as wiping the wall, but the progress was good. He observed the situation in the sea fog. No one had approached him without permission. He anticipated conflicts. Then, he remembered the matter of the imperial city. He asked Zheng Shijiu to help him inquire and see when the imperial city's marriage alliance ceremony would start. Most people had heard about this, and Zheng Shijiu quickly got the answer after going out for a while. It would start at the beginning of July. A little over a month was left for that. It seems that the changes are about to begin. He needed to prepare for it. There would probably be some waves in the sea fog cave. The gathering was about to start. Senior Dan Yuan seemed to be paying a lot of attention to this matter, and they would surely exchange information before it started. At the White Moon Lake, Zhuo Cheng stood by the side. "Tell me what you saw when you entered the sea fog cave," Baiji asked softly. She had been investigating the matter these past few days. Only after roughly understanding everything would she proceed with her plan. "I saw junior brother Jiang standing in front of the wall and looking at the contents on it. He seemed to understand them," said Zhuo Cheng. "I asked junior brother Jiang, and it seems he has learned about some other languages." "What else?" Baiji asked. "Then, he made a strange move," said Zhuo Cheng. "After watching for a while, he suddenly turned his head and seemed to feel something. But I watched carefully, and there was nothing around him. After that, he was suppressed by the light from the wall." Baiji lowered her head in thought. Zhuo Cheng's answer was exactly the same as Jiang Hao's. There was indeed a figure there at the beginning. This was the second time Jiang Hao had seen this figure. As for what this figure represented, she could only speculate, but she could be sure that this figure prevented Jiang Hao from being affected by the wall. "What is Jiang Hao doing now?" Baiji asked. "His mining," Zhuo Cheng said. Baiji remained silent for a moment. "Has anyone tried to enter that area?" 3. "One of them is extremely powerful and has been sent to the higher levels of the Lawless Tower," Zhuo Cheng said nervously. After the light appeared, the people of the Lawless Tower gathered and collaborated with the Law Enforcement Hall and hid in the sea fog cave. They were lying in wait. They knew that some people would always intervene in matters like these. That was why they had instructed Jiang Hao and his group not to leave the mining area. "Have you asked about it?" "We did, briefly. It might be related to the Saint Bandits, but we don't have much information about them." After asking for some more details, Baiji asked Zhuo Cheng to leave. After that, she looked toward the highest peak in the sect. She needed to go up there. At the Imperial City, Baiju sighed with her chin on her hands. "It's been so long. Why hasn't General Lin come yet?" Given the opportunity, he turned out to be useless too. "Maybe he thinks you aren't suitable, so he found someone else." Auntie Chow helped pour a cup of tea. "Why am I not suitable? I'm older in age and have a shorter lifespan. If he marries me and then wants to change his mind, he won't have to wait long. The young princesses would seek to live together for hundreds of years." Baiju drank her tea. "Maybe it's because of your age," said Aunt Chow somewhat helplessly. "Princess, don't worry. It won't be long before he comes again. The grand event is about to start, and he, the Shangguan family's heir, won't find a suitable candidate. After all, to enter the ancestral land and receive the blessing of the earth, you need a member of the royal family to be with you." "Have some of my sisters visited recently?" Baiju suddenly asked. "Yes, they all came to ask how old you were now." Aunt Chow nodded. "Did you tell them?" "I did, but I deliberately made you appear younger." "Did you say I'm 15 years old?" 315 years old. Baiju was speechless. "Oh right. Prince Baiju visited and mentioned that in a couple of days, he will take you to meet Prince Bai Chen. I have to go see my eldest brother." Chapter 519. Chapter 519. I astonish time and dim the years. Chapter 519. I astonish time and dim the years. At the Imperial City, time passed, and most people began to gather. Almost everyone who received the invitation came to the event. Luo Zhong was one of them. After buying the invitation from Jiang Hao, he hurried over without delay. It wasn't a smooth journey, and he had to pawn a lot of things, but he finally made it. The location of the imperial city was the core of the southern capital. The city was huge. Inside, there were not only the royal family but also various dignitaries. As Luo Zhong walked on the street, people came and went. There were various cultivation residences and ordinary shops. Regardless of whether one practiced or not, they still needed to lead a normal life. Most of the royals were ordinary people, so they naturally needed these things. It'll be fine. Luo Zhong looked at the invitation in his hand and felt lucky. However, he was puzzled. That junior had asked him to inform him about what he saw and heard. Although royal marriages were rare, they weren't that extraordinary. Who asks for information instead of spirit stones? Along the way, he observed everything. He would inform that junior about it later. Of course, the most important thing was the royal family. Even if he couldn't get what he wanted in the end, he would just note down what he saw and heard around him. But before that, he needed to eat something to replenish the energy he spent rushing here. He ate meat with spiritual energy. However, due to a shortage of spirit stones, he could only find a small shop in an alley. The things here were expensive and not really delicious, but they were good for replenishing lifeblood. However, he dared not eat extravagantly. He feared that he might not be able to afford it and would feel embarrassed later. He was just living hand to mouth. As he left, he walked along an empty alley. Suddenly, he sensed some fluctuations of spiritual energy. His instinctive vigilance made him react. He heard someone speaking. Hasn't the Shangguan family found a suitable match yet? They are indeed a bit slow, but this kind of thing can't be rushed, or it will easily expose flaws. They are really slow in handling matters. They still want to become the new royal family with this attitude. It's hard to say. Our vision is limited. Regardless, we must ensure the success of our plan this time. The royal family is cooperating with us openly, but they should also be planning something in secret. Luo Zhong was startled. He seemed to have heard something extraordinary. Without hesitation, he tried to leave from there. But just as he took a step, he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Friend, where are you going?" said a calm voice. Around mid-June, Baizhu finally saw General Lin. When Aunt Qiao mentioned that her elder brother wanted to see her, she did want to meet him. She hadn't seen him in centuries. Unfortunately, it seemed that he was quite busy, and days passed by without finding the time. However, it was good that General Lin came. It saved her from reaching out first. "Princess, someone is here," said Aunt Qiao in a hushed tone. Baizhu nodded and poured tea for herself. Shortly after, the general appeared at the garden gate. He came straight to Baizhu and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Princess. Why are you here this time, General Lin?" Baizhu asked as she propped her chin up with one hand and smiled. "I am still here on behalf of Prince Shangguan." General Lin hesitated for a moment. "Princess, you can state any conditions you have." "Any conditions?" Baizhu asked. "Most conditions will be accepted." "Do you have snow god pills?" Baizhu asked. General Lin was speechless. "It seems you don't." Baizhu shook her head with a sigh. "Princess, that is a difficult request," General Lin said softly. This time, he dared not show any disrespect. The Grand Assembly was about to begin, and the princess before him was the best choice. Since the Shangguan family had given him enough benefits, he naturally had to do his best. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't produce a snow god pill. There was none in the entire imperial city. It was almost a mythical pill. "It is a bit difficult. Let me think about what else I might need," Baizhu said calmly. "Princess, take your time," General Lin said. Since Princess Baizhu had started stating conditions, there was hope. He just feared it would be like last time when she just ignored him without even hearing the proposal. "I remember the Shangguan family has something called the Spear of Curses. Can I have that?" Baizhu asked with a smile. General Lin fell silent for a moment. I need to ask about this and see what they say. If you have any other requests, please feel free to mention them. One more thing, I haven't figured it out yet, so you can help me with that. Get me 2 more items. One from the east and one from overseas, said Baizhu as she lifted the teacup and took a sip. If your conditions are fulfilled, you'll agree, Princess, asked General Lin. It depends on whether the items you offer me show sincerity. If I feel you are sincere, maybe that's possible, said Baizhu. All right. I'll go negotiate now. General Lin bowed and began to leave. Are you really going to agree, Princess? Aunt Chow asked as she saw him leaving. Agree to what? Baizhu asked in return. The marriage, Aunt Chow said. Baizhu smiled. Even if I pretend to agree, it'll never happen. Don't be fooled. They just want to covet the blessing of the land. Aunt Chow was puzzled. Won't you need to set a marriage contract once you're out of the ancestral land? Baizhu smiled faintly, extended her hand, and gently grasped hers. I am the first princess of the royal family. I astonish time and dim the years. Forget about surpassing, no one can even match 1/10 of my strength. As long as I don't let the prince enter the ancestral land, won't that be enough? Auntie Chow looked at the princess helplessly. Since when did the princess speak of herself like this? Over 300 years old, yet she still looked unchanged. At the sea fog cave, Jiang Hao led the team in mining for ores. They mined until late June, then stopped. He walked out of the cave alone. Others were a bit alarmed when they saw the manager going out. Why did the manager suddenly leave? I don't know. Could there be danger here? It's unlikely. Probably, there are no secrets here, so he didn't linger. As they talked, the group became a bit excited. Jiang Hao ignored them. Mining was good, but it depended on the timing. If the information Zhang Shijiu got was correct, then danger was imminent. He needed to be prepared. As for whether it would affect him, that was uncertain. After waiting for 2 more days, Jiang Hao arrived at the gathering. It seems like it's really about to begin. At first, it was only the matter of the Imperial City, but I didn't expect the Heavenly Note sect to get involved. Jiang Hao lowered his head. While this matter involved the Heavenly Note sect, he was still on the periphery. As long as he was cautious, there shouldn't be any major issues. For safety's sake, he found a jar. Human, what do you want? Why are you so alert, senior? Jiang Hao was curious. You are not a good person, so what good could come out of it? Jiang Hao was speechless. Are you going to fly into a rage? Jiang Hao looked at the creature in front of him. He was unsure how to make sense of it. Chapter 520. Chapter 520. The Heavenly King won't bow down even if the Lord of Heaven comes. Chapter 520. The Heavenly King won't bow down even if the Lord of Heaven comes. Senior, do you think the sea fog here is stable? After a moment of hesitation, Jiang Hao got straight to the point. Not stable, Ajah said. Jiang Hao was quite surprised and looked at Ajah. And Ajah looked back at him. After going out, I'll bring you some flesh and blood, Jiang Hao said. Do you think I believe you? Ajah asked. Jiang Hao was speechless. This was the downside of being in a demonic sect. Nobody believed what he said. Because it had been deceived before, Ajah no longer believed in anyone. After that, he asked Zheng Shijiu for some flesh and blood. Ajah needed nourishment. Although the sea fog here looks normal, it's about to get rough. Ajah ate the meat. The waves will cause a moment of chaos in the sea fog cave, and we all need to avoid it. But we are too far outside, so there shouldn't be any problems. Why are there waves? Jiang Hao asked. Ajah looked at Jiang Hao in puzzlement. In his understanding, there seemed to be no reason for the waves. But that would make it easier to seize the royal fortune. It might also be a sign that danger was approaching. He had to leave before that. After roughly understanding it, Jiang Hao returned to his room and waited. At midnight, Jiang Hao entered the common area of the stone tablet. Gui and others had already arrived. Is there any problem with your cultivation? Dan Yuan asked everyone. Do you know what to pay attention to when practicing the freeform technique? Xing asked. This surprised everyone. Xing wanted to practice the freeform technique? Wasn't that the technique of the Clear Sky School? You should avoid the Clear Sky School's technique. The freeform technique has a benefit, which is that it is compatible with various techniques. So, if you really want it, you can integrate the freeform technique with your own technique and can practice with confidence, Dan Yuan said. Xing nodded. Jiang Hao felt that Senior Dan Yuan spoke casually, but the difficulty was self-evident. Modifying the freeform technique was not something an ordinary person could do. Senior Dan Yuan might be able to do it, but he only gave the information without actually describing the method. If Xing wanted the method, then it would be a trade. The task of the Saint Bandits has changed. Someone wants to know about Heaven Lock, said Dan Yuan. Heaven Lock? Even Xing was at a loss. They hadn't heard of it before. I only know that Heaven Lock is related to the Saint Bandits and seems to have just come to light, Dan Yuan said. If you have information about Heaven Lock, you can exchange it for a snow god pill. If you know the information, you can provide the corresponding reward. Jiang Hao remained silent for a moment. The information about Heaven Lock was currently with the high-level members of the Heavenly Note sect. The likelihood of it leaking was very low. Someone had already noticed it. Although Senior Zheng and others had seen Heaven Lock, they didn't know with certainty that it was Heaven Lock. For now, only he, Elder Baiji, and Seniors Wu Cheng might know about it. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Hao chose not to speak about it. There was no hurry for now, and he didn't plan to leak the Heaven Lock technique. The impact of such a thing would be too significant and could easily lead to a second group of Saint Bandits. What he wanted was a stable cultivation environment, and Heaven Lock would disrupt that stability. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. Friend Jing, you can ask for a reward, Dan Yuan suddenly said. Jiang Hao felt a bit anxious. He thought that Dan Yuan might know that he had. Fortunately, he didn't show it, and he remembered the reason for this reward. It was the information he had given last time. I would like to know about the Great Thousand God Sect's Feng Hua. If you have any contact information, that would be great, said Jiang Hao. Okay. Dan Yuan nodded, then looked at Liu. Liu, did you receive what you wanted? Thank you, Senior. I have received it. Liu nodded. Jiang Hao knew it was a protective talisman. After the transactions, they moved on to discuss casual matters. The first to speak was Gui. The Imperial City's marriage alliance is about to begin. I should be able to infiltrate them. I haven't found anything lately, but I successfully made contact with Shangguan Hengyu. Be careful, Gui. The Shangguan family is cooperating with the Saint Bandits. There is a possibility that they want to become the new royal family. What they're doing is not simple, Dan Yuan said. Gui nodded. Shangguan Hengyu is crucial in this, Jiang Hao said. Whether it was Senior Dan Yuan or him, they didn't want the Saint Bandits to succeed. Friend Jing, have you been near the Heavenly Note sect lately? Dan Yuan asked. Jiang Hao knew that he wanted him to take action, and he couldn't refuse, but he also couldn't agree. If everything goes well, I'll make a trip. As for whether it would go well or not, it all depended on how he wanted to play it. What is the purpose of marrying into the royal family? Liu curiously asked. For the sake of future generations. Having the blessings of the earth and royal bloodline leads to a longer lifespan and an easier path in the future, Xing said. There's actually another thing, Gui said. It's said that children born to the royal family have a certain probability of becoming great Earth sovereigns. Earth sovereigns? Jiang Hao was puzzled. Is it something like the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment? Liu asked. Definitely not as powerful as that, but undoubtedly extraordinary. As for whether it's true or not, it's hard to say. Such individuals haven't appeared in the southern region, but it's uncertain whether they are in the other regions, Gui said. Everyone looked at Senior Dan Yuan. Do you know about the Shenyuan clan? Dan Yuan asked the crowd. They were the former royal family, who had Earth sovereigns and were people of great luck. However, they are different from the current royal families, who are from various tribes. The Shenyuan clan was the guardian of the mountains and seas and was recognized by the earth and oceans as the royal family. As for whether the current royal family can produce earth sovereigns, it's still uncertain. But there's indeed a certain possibility. The Shenyuan clan? Jiang Hao recalled Shenyuan Tai, who was indeed a guardian of the mountains and seas. But Shenyuan he didn't seem to be the same. However, he didn't think too much about it because he was sure that the Shenyuan clan was no longer a royal family. He didn't know about the details. As for the Earth Sovereigns, he probably wouldn't encounter one. Xing mentioned that Shongan had left the Clear Sky School. No one knew where he went. Bitxing affirmed that when Shongan returned, he would finally take the step to ascend higher. Jiang Hao sighed and decided to find out whether the corpse realm had opened up again. If it had, he would try to enter through by using the golden rings. Recently, Heavenly King Hai Luo took some people to find the end of all things and the Great Thousand God sect. It seems he obtained some secret and disappeared completely in the end. His subordinates have once again returned to their previous place. The difference is that this time, they seem to be used to it. It's just that no one knows if the Heavenly King is alive or not. Many people are concerned, said Liu. Some ambitious people were concerned because they thought King Hai Luo might still be alive, while others who were loyal to him worried that he might have died. However, King Hai Luo's sudden radical actions made them wonder if it was due to emotional distress. Outside the Heavenly Note sect, a middle-aged man appeared a bit disheveled but had a gleam in his eyes. He threw a powerful artifact, which caused an explosion that shook the surroundings. He was forcefully intruding into the mountain gate. After a while, an elder suppressed him. However, the hearty voice of the man spread far and wide. Summon the people from the lawless tower. This time, this heavenly king is fearless. Even if the Lord of Heaven comes here, he can't keep this heavenly king quiet and will have to listen to him. Who dares to refute me this time? The elder was somewhat surprised. But he still contacted the people of the lawless tower. Zhuo Cheng arrived to help assist in the situation. What he saw stunned him. Chapter 521, Chapter 521, A Bad Person. Chapter 521, A Bad Person. 3 days were left until it was July. Since the last gathering, Baizhu was waiting for the right time. Senior Dan Yuan should be quite concerned about this royal family union. Perhaps his people will come. Jing said everything will go smoothly. I wonder if he's dealing with something dangerous again. Senior Dan Yuan gave her a sense of reliability, while Jing made her feel that danger was everywhere. It wasn't that he was dangerous, but it made her feel like he was always involved in something dangerous. The heavenly fate misfortune pearl was with him. He was also the first to know about the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Who knows what other dangerous things he had on him? Fortunately, everyone was here for a gathering, so conflicts were unlikely to arise. Shaking her head with a sigh, Baizhu decided to complete the task at hand first. In the courtyard, she sipped tea and looked at the gate. She waited for the Shangguan family's response and also her elder brother. Only 3 days were left until the main event. She felt that the Shangguan family's response was about to come. After all, they couldn't wait forever. But what surprised her was that her second brother came to visit her. I'm thinking about when our eldest brother will be free. Baizhu stretched and sighed. Let's go, Baiyu said. Go where? Baizhu was puzzled. You were asking when our eldest brother would be free, right? Well, he is now. Baiyu smiled. Now? Baizhu perked up. After a short while, the two of them walked out of the courtyard together. Where's Auntie Qiao? Baiyu asked. She went to buy some snacks for me. It is a bit far, so it will take her some time to come back, Baizhu said softly. Sister, you're really brave. I heard that the other princesses are eyeing you and planning to bully you, said Baiyu with a smile. The imperial palace was vast and magnificent. The path was lined with blooming flowers, and the trees were neatly arranged. A faint floral fragrance wafted up and refreshed the senses. This place still smells so nice, said Baizhu with a smile. It's been a long time since you've been here, hasn't it? Baiyu looked around and whispered, You've been away from the imperial city for years. Even when you come back, you just stay in your own residence. That's right. I worry that people will make fun of me when I come out. What if I get angry and they suffer? I might draw circles at night to curse them, said Baiju jokingly. Baiju ignored it. They talked and laughed along the way and occasionally saw some women along the way. They were beautiful. Most of them were young princesses, and they seemed surprised when they saw Baiju as if they were looking at something elusive and rare. Everyone stole glances at her. The bold ones would come over and greet them. Royal brother, royal sister, greeting. Then, they asked about their age and were stunned to look at a princess who was over 300 years old. After a long time, Baiju entered a large courtyard and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This was why she didn't want to leave the palace. Some princesses were genuinely curious, while others wanted to ridicule her. It was not a pleasant experience. Out of sight, out of mind. Come in. A deep voice came from the courtyard. Baiju looked inside but didn't see anyone. Eldest brother has already entered the return to Void Realm. We can hear his voice, but we can't see his figure. Baiju smiled. Come on, let's go in. Will you also reach this realm soon? Baiju asked. It's probably impossible for me. Although we, the royal family, live a long time, talent is not determined by age. Baiju sounded regretful. It's a pity that our royal family hasn't produced a stunning genius. There is. Baiju pointed at herself. Right here. Baiju laughed and led the way ahead. After a while, they saw their eldest brother by a pond. He looked like a man in his 30s with no visible aura on his body. He wore a grey robe. Big brother, said Baiju. Big brother. Baiju followed suit. At this moment, Baiju turned around. His features were distinct, and his eyes were deep. He exuded a majestic aura. It's been many years since I last saw you. Baiju, you're already at the primordial spirit realm. What about you, Baiju? He asked with a gentle smile. Baiju chuckled. Big brother, stop making fun of Baiju. Otherwise, she'll say she's the first genius of the royal family and her realm is unfathomable. Baiju was speechless. Bai Chen laughed and looked at his sister. I heard you've been in contact with the Shangguan family? Yeah. I asked for some things, she said. Yeah, it's good to make contacts. Bai Chen nodded. If you encounter any trouble, you can come to me. Perhaps we are not stronger than others, but we are not afraid of them. Baiju nodded and promised to do so. In fact, she hadn't been here before, and she didn't have any trouble. Here, take this. Bai Chen then handed over 2 blood jade pendants. When there's danger, I'll sense it. If I'm not held back, I'll come and help you. Also, the palace may not be very stable lately, so don't wander around. Baiju nodded with a sunny smile. The next day, at Baiju's house, General Lin visited her with 3 items. One was the Spear of Curses she had requested. Another was a book from overseas titled Travels in the Heavenly River, and a 6-sided die from the east. A replica? Baiju noticed that the 6-sided dice was a replica, but even so, she felt it shouldn't be used carelessly. Overall, these gifts were not sincere enough, but General Lin insisted. So, Baiju had no choice but to cooperate and accept these items. Then, she decided that in 2 days, she would enter the ancestral land with the heir of the Shangguan family. In early July, Jiang Hao stood in front of a sea fog in the sea fog cave. He looked ahead and waited for something to change. Ajah stood beside him. It was curious about this human. Human, how do you behave as a person? How do I behave as a person? I think a person like you won't be harassed or exploited. Why not? Many things are beyond one's control. Jiang Hao shook his head. He wanted to leave this place, but it was not suitable to leave without a proper reason. He had to do things till he remained in the Heavenly Note sect. So, what does it take to not be harassed or bullied? Ajah was curious. What do you think? Jiang Hao asked. Ajah thought for a moment. Do whatever you want to do. Jiang Hao shook his head. Ideally, yes. But sometimes you have to do things even if you don't want to. Ajah was puzzled. It suddenly paused. They're here. Upon hearing this, Jiang Hao closed his eyes and began to sense the sea fog. The nameless manual guided him. He could sense subtle movement from the sea fog. The waves were coming. Without hesitation, he found Zheng Shijiu and the others. Please have everyone pack up. We need to leave this place quickly, said Jiang. How? The crowd was stunned. Yu Yu was about to ask, but Zheng Shijiu and Xin Yue began to make arrangements immediately. Xiao Xiaohui and the others were also surprised by this. They hadn't received any evacuation orders. It wasn't until Ajah spoke that they found out the sea fog cave was about to create waves. Chapter 522. Chapter 522. This is the real me, a super genius. Chapter 522. This is the real me, a super genius. Human, why are you leaving? It's dangerous in the sea fog when the waves are forming. Even I may not find the right direction, Ajah said as she walked ahead of Jiang Hao in the sea fog. In fact, it wasn't just Ajah. Many people didn't understand. They felt Jiang Hao was a bit delusional. If there were waves coming, it would be safer to stay in place. There were treasures and defenses set up in the area. Wasn't it better than running around in the sea mist? Jiang Hao didn't explain to those who questioned him. He wasn't forcing them to leave. On the contrary, he preferred acting alone. It's just that he didn't want them to be in danger because he was in charge. This wave was extraordinary. The royal family, the sacred bandits, the heavenly note sect, and powerful individuals from overseas were all involved. After what the sacred bandits had been planning for a long time, he didn't believe that the people on the periphery would be safe. So even if they were punished, it wouldn't matter. They just didn't know if they would make it in time. The sea fog seemed to be changing. They needed to leave quickly. However, it wasn't that easy. Ajah seemed to have lost its way. What's going on? Why can't I find the direction? It seems to be getting blurry, Ajah said. Even you can't find the way, senior? Zheng Shijiu was surprised. It's not that easy, Ajah said. The others were a bit worried, and some even said it would be better to stay in the stronghold. At least they could try to defend themselves. Now, in the sea fog, they couldn't even see the way. It was like waiting for death to come. The others could only agree. Jiang Hao lowered his head. He hadn't seen much with the technique from the nameless manual, so he couldn't find the way, especially with so many forks in the road. In the imperial city, the moon was bright. The wedding ceremony had already begun, and Baizhu sat in a corner. She still hadn't seen Shangguan Hengyu, but the first group of people was about to enter the ancestral ground, so he should be coming soon. Princess, do you really want to go into the ancestral ground with the Crown Prince Shangguan? Auntie Qiao was a bit worried. It's just to take a look. Speaking of which, I haven't been there before, so let's take a look, Baizhu said with a smile. Aren't you afraid of getting married for real? Auntie Qiao asked. What if they break the engagement on the other side? Given his personality, he could do something like that, Baizhu said without concern. Auntie Qiao felt that the princess had already thought of a way to make the other person break the engagement. That would mean she would escape the marriage but still would receive the gifts she had asked for. If everything went smoothly, she felt the princess would gain a lot. But she didn't know if it would cause trouble. At that moment, a young man walked over to Baizhu. Princess Baizhu, he asked with a smile. That's me. Baizhu nodded. Shangguan Hengyu? Yes. Are you the one who cried and wanted to go into the ancestral ground with me? Shangguan Hengyu said disdainfully. He was dressed in magnificent clothes and had an extraordinary appearance. Have I disappointed you? Then, it's fine. Let's not go. Baizhu looked at him. I was just joking. Shangguan Hengyu snorted coldly and didn't speak again. After that, they planned to go to their ancestral land. Before entering, Qiao Yi informed Baizhu that the prince was in the Golden Core Realm and that she should be careful. Golden Core Realm? Baizhu smiled. He was not at the Golden Core Realm for real. He was only slightly weaker than her brother. The Shangguan family kept their real cultivation realm hidden. The ancestral land was deep within the imperial city. They were led by the guards and walked into the ancestral land. Here, they could receive the blessing of the land, but what exactly the blessing was, few people could perceive it. But every royal family member, upon marriage, had to come here once. They could only enter once. So, if they didn't intend to marry for real, not many people would visit the place. After entering the gate of the ancestral land, Shangwon Hungyu seemed to relax. Princess, I didn't expect you to be over 300 years old and still look so young. Do you like older women? Baizhu looked at the person beside her. Not really. I was just marveling at how well you are dressed. Shangwon Hungyu shook his head and walked ahead. He seemed to have his own purpose for this trip. Baizhu followed behind him and didn't care. She just let him go wherever he wanted. Maybe it's my natural beauty, said Baizhu. Princess, do you think it was right to choose to come to the ancestral land right now? Shangwon Hungyu looked serious. He didn't look frivolous and flighty like before. It certainly doesn't feel wrong, Baizhu said. Do you think you are a bit naive and getting older and less knowledgeable? Shangwon Hungyu asked while preparing something in an open space. You are the same as the rumors made you out to be. Young with little to no experience. By now, the formation had been set up, and everything was ready. The moon was in the sky. The moonlight shone on the formation and activated it. That's true. Baizhu nodded. Princess, you are as naive as they say. You must be getting older, Shangwon. Hungyu said and gestured to her. Can you stand inside? Of course. Baizhu nodded. She stepped into the formation. She looked unconcerned. I heard you like to talk big. What kind of big things do you say? Shangwon Hungyu asked while activating the formation. By now, the formation was fully activated, and a light enveloped Baizhu. Gradually, something eroded her body. I often tell Auntie Qiao that I am the first genius of the royal family and unparalleled throughout history. Standing at the pinnacle of the royal family, I'm only slightly inferior to the astonishing geniuses. Baizhu shrugged. But Auntie Qiao just laughs at me, and so does my second brother. Although my eldest brother doesn't speak, I'm sure he's laughing inside too. That's indeed quite amusing. Shangwon Hungyu nodded. Then, he looked at the young girl in front of him. Do you have any last words? Last words? Baizhu tilted her head in confusion. I'm fine and dandy. Why would I need to say my last words? That's a pity. Shangwon Hungyu sighed. Then, he cast his technique, and the fortune of the royal family began to be corroded. A formation appeared under his feet. But he felt uncomfortable. Then, without any warning, the flesh of his arm began to rot. What's going on? The sudden change shocked him. A curse. Haven't you encountered it before? Baizhu stood in the center of the formation. A curse. Shangwon Hungyu's face changed, and he immediately tried to channel his power to counter it, but it had no effect. How is this possible? How can a mere curse be impossible to dispel? He exclaimed. A mere curse. Baizhu gave him a charming smile. This is not just a mere curse. It's the curse on my body. According to your words, you're just an early-stage return to Void Realm Cultivator. How can you withstand the curse on my body? Shangwon Hungyu was horrified to find that his flesh and blood were also decaying, and his cultivation was crumbling. He panicked. He gritted his teeth as he looked at the young girl in front of him. What do you mean? Baizhu shrugged. Didn't I just tell you? I am the first genius of the royal family and am unparalleled throughout history. The entire imperial city can't even match my strength. This is the real me. It's just that no one believes me. Chapter 523, Chapter 523, Beyond Saving. Chapter 523, Beyond Saving. At the ancestral land of the royal family, a young woman stood in a brightly lit array of magic. A man stood opposite her. The array under his feet gradually darkened. It seemed like something was being transferred from his body. But this simple transfer was enough to make his flesh rot, his cultivation collapse, and his life wither. He looked at the young woman in front of him in disbelief. Why? How does no one know about this? Shangguan Hengyu was filled with questions. They had been paying attention to the royal family for so many years, and even the saint bandits had confirmed it. Why had no one discovered this person's strength? Perhaps because you were overconfident. After all, when I told you just now, you were so full of yourself. Baizhu smiled. At this point, the curses on her body were rapidly leaving her and merging into the array. These curses were being transferred through Shangguan Hengyu to an unknown location. Baizhu had some speculation about this. It must be going to the Sea Fog Cave of the Heavenly Note sect. The other side of the array would also bear her curse, but that was no longer. Shangguan Hengyu smiled bitterly. The flesh on his body was decaying, and this decaying flesh kept falling off. He was filled with regret. I didn't expect that I actually picked someone who could ruin everything for me. Actually, you didn't pick me, Baizhu said. It was I who picked you. You cooperated with the Saint Bandits because you wanted to become the next royal family and coveted the blessing of the land. I couldn't turn a blind eye to that. So, as one of the key figures involved in this, you naturally caught my attention. At that point, Shangguan Hengyu's body was disintegrating, and he couldn't make a sound anymore. He could only stare at the young woman in front of him in fear and confusion. When had he exposed himself? I should actually thank you. This array is a bit unique. It can transfer all the curses out of my body. It allowed me to successfully reach where I intended. Baizhu took a step in the air as if stepping on an endless platform. She looked up at the sky. The sky is even broader now, and I have the qualifications to touch the limit. Then, a new curse appeared on her. This time, it no longer affected her. It was as if she had the natural talent to avoid it. Shangguan Hengyu watched Baizhu in disbelief. He didn't know what realm she was in. His cultivation realm and energy dissipated and finally turned into dry bones and became part of the earth. Boom! In the distance, there was a rumble. Someone shouted in anger. Baizhu knew that the conflict had begun, but she planned to observe secretly and only intervene if necessary. She didn't want to stay in the imperial city, but she had to wait until her lifespan was extended. Shaking her head with a smile, she headed deeper into the ancestral land. As she left, all traces gradually disappeared, as if she had never existed in the first place. Deep inside the sea fog cave, the sea fog was constantly churning. Some tentacles appeared in the sea fog, but they were hard to see clearly. In the shadows, there was an altar in operation. The man who arranged the personnel earlier was maintaining it. He was waiting for the arrival of the royal family's fortune from the other side. Tong Tian, be careful, Yi Jian reminded him. He had made many preparations. Everything was ready. I know. Tong Tian nodded and looked into the distance. The people from the Heavenly Note sect are coming. Once we start, they will find us. You should be careful. Yi Jian looked outside and sighed. They had arrived. Unfortunately, he needed quite a bit of time to restore his peak strength. At this moment, a trace of the royal family's fortune appeared on the altar. Tong Tian was overjoyed. Finally, they were going to succeed. But soon, he frowned. Yi Jian furrowed his brows in confusion. What happened? Tong Tian remained calm and then said, sever the connection between me and the other altars, all altars related to Shangguan Hengyu. Yi Jian immediately severed all connections related to Shangguan Hengyu, and then looked at Tong Tian. What's happening to you? I'm beyond saving. Tong Tian's voice was calm as if he was talking about someone else's matter. At this moment, he was still letting the array absorb things from the other side and separating the fortune from the curse on the way. The fortune condensed into a bead, and the curse stayed on him. If I regain some cultivation, maybe I can avoid this disaster, but unfortunately, the other side is too strong, Tong Tian calmly said. Black fumes appeared on his skin. However, in the next breath, the black spots started decaying. His cultivation was also crumbling. Tong Tian did not show anger or pain. On the contrary, relief showed on his face. This is also good. I can go and do my own things now. Tong Tian turned to Yi Jian. Something has happened in the imperial city, and it's something unexpected. But the consequences are now your concern. Now, I want to do one last thing. Yi Jian looked at his friend and hesitated. Let me take you back. Perhaps there's still hope. With my cultivation and artifacts, I can buy you enough time. Tong Tian smiled and shook his head. No need. It's fine. This is enough. Tong Lu is dead, and I need to do something for him. Even if I can go back alive, it's not what I wish for. Yi Jian lowered his head and remained silent. Tong Tian staggered down from the altar and then placed some treasures on it. He was about to die, so he left all his useful things for his friend. Finally, he walked into the sea fog and disappeared. Yi Jian was silent for a moment, but he had to continue with the plan. The Heavenly Note sect was an enemy they had to face. Their plan had reached this point, and they were no longer worried about being discovered. Countless tentacles emerged behind him. They bore many runes. Then, they charged outward. It wasn't just him. In every passage, tentacles appeared. It seemed as if they wanted to engulf all life in the sea fog cave to provide power for their plan. Shangguan Hongyu's failure was a significant blow to them, but this was not the entirety of their plan. Outside the sea fog cave, Jiang Hao led the way, and the sea fog kept rushing in. Even Ajah found it difficult to find the path. Fortunately, they did not backtrack. If it weren't for the Sea Patrol Spirit Beast guiding the way, they would have been lost in this fog. The beast was indeed very accurate in finding the way. How are you doing, Senior? Jiang Hao asked in a low voice. He felt danger everywhere. Others seemed unconcerned as if they didn't think much of the tide. Ajah had said that the fog wasn't something to worry about. They all felt Jiang Hao had made the wrong decision. Xiao Xiaohui and the bald golden core realm cultivator also felt this way, but they didn't know the strength of the other side, so they couldn't say much. How about we turn back? Asked a Foundation establishment cultivator suddenly. I asked the Sea Patrol spirit beasts, and they confirmed that turning back will surely take us back to the base. Chapter 524. Chapter 524. Junior brother is always kind to others. Chapter 524. Junior brother is always kind to others. Walking in the sea fog was unsettling. Some people wanted to go back and continue staying at the base. Yeah. Going back the way we came would be much quicker, said someone. Things were getting noisy as more people chimed in. Zheng Shijiu wanted to dissuade them, but Jiang Hao stopped him. He let everyone choose for themselves. It was not his choice. He would let everyone make their own decision. Some people chose to leave. They asked Jiang Hao about the ores and the mines. Jiang Hao told them they could have it. They were even more excited to go back. Some people looked at the few golden core realm cultivators. If there was a golden core realm cultivator among them, they would follow. However, Xiao Xiaohui and the bald cultivator hesitated for a long time and eventually gave up. They had faced Jiang Hao's threat earlier and were afraid of retaliation. They sought refuge in stronger individuals. In the end, only some of the people left. Most of them lacked confidence and were afraid of making the wrong choice. So, it was better to follow the strong. If you want to leave, you can leave now. Don't blame me for being heartless if you can't leave later. Zheng Shijiu looked at the people around coldly. There was no response. Jiang Hao didn't mind. He would fulfill his responsibilities. Beyond that, they weren't his concern. They weren't children, after all. They could make their own choices. As long as it didn't affect his safety, he didn't need to care. Ajah, lead the way, Jiang Hao said. The others could only follow. Among the people who stayed behind, most just went with the flow, but some had stayed behind because they trusted Jiang Hao's judgment. In the end, these people discovered that the manager didn't intervene when others went away and felt a bit regretful. If they had left earlier, they could have gone back to mine and obtained a lot of spirit stones. In the fog, everyone felt insecure, as if danger could strike at any moment. Zheng Shijiu and Xin Yuyue, on the other hand, had confidence in Jiang Hao. They had worked together many times and knew him. Xiao Xiaohui and the others were uneasy. The sea fog was becoming more intense. If it got any denser, they might lose their way entirely. However, since things had come to this point, they could only grit their teeth and continue ahead. After a while, the sea fog started to churn. Their field of vision and their perception shrank. Ajah didn't dare to point in a random direction. The people who went back might have already reached the base, someone said softly. Jiang Hao stopped. He looked in a certain direction with a frown. Senior, look over there. Ajah turned to look. A little while later, Ajah's face changed. Oh no. How did these monsters end up here? We're done for. Hurry. Run. Ajah exclaimed in panic. The others were confused. Ajah wanted to escape alone but was grabbed by Jiang Hao. Senior, stay calm. Running randomly will be dangerous. Find a way out of the sea fog cave, Jiang Hao said. Ajah felt immense pressure. It hadn't expected these things to appear. They had never come out during previous surges. This also confirmed that it should learn from these humans in the future. Boom. As the sea fog closed, the tentacles began to attack. Jiang Hao unsheathed his half-moon blade and used the demonic sound slash. Boom. The blade flashed and temporarily dispersed some of the sea fog. Thus, the thing underneath the sea fog was revealed. Countless tentacles were swiftly rushing toward them. The frontmost tentacle had some bloodstains on it, and it even held some ore. It even held onto some severed human limbs. Blood was dripping from the severed parts. Jiang Hao knew that those who had just left were in great danger. The people behind him turned pale in shock. They saw the oars, which meant they felt lucky to have followed Jiang Hao instead of going back. Senior Ajah, find a way out quickly, someone begged in fear. We can't go the wrong way. If we do, we'll be attacked from behind, Jiang Hao said. Ajah felt stressed. It hadn't expected these things to come out. They had never done so before. Boom. As the sea fog closed, the tentacles began their assault. Jiang Hao slashed with his half-moon blade. The tentacles were cut off. But soon, new tentacles continued their attack. The strength of the late Foundation establishment stage, said Jiang Hao. Xiao Xiaohui and the others were overjoyed. If it was only at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, they could hold their own, especially with their 4 golden core realm cultivators. Boom. Boom. They fought for a while and retreated. Even with 4 golden core realm cultivators, they couldn't stop the Foundation establishment realm tentacles. Some of them were injured. As time passed, the strength of these tentacles increased. They were almost at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. Jiang Hao frowned. If they continued like this, these people would all die. He couldn't go ahead alone. Moreover, without Ajah, it was unlikely that he could find his way. He would have to use his golden rings to go back. Boom. The tentacle attacks were relentless. Even a golden core realm cultivator couldn't escape unscathed. Only Jiang Hao, who had studied the Nameless Manual and could finally control his power, could handle it with ease. The bald golden core realm cultivator tried to beat back the tentacles with his blade. However, the more he fought, the more he was surrounded by numerous tentacles. When he came to his senses, he found himself completely surrounded by the tentacles. They were surging toward him. Even when he defeated a part of them, it was futile because new tentacles replaced them instantly. These tentacles were shifting toward the gold core realm cultivator gradually. At that point, he had no way to retreat. He began to panic. Although he had escaped to this point, he was now in a dire situation because of his impulsiveness. He opened his mouth, attempting to plead for help. But who would come to save him at this moment? Everyone was selfish. When others were in crisis, they would not rush to help them at the expense of their own lives. He should have understood this earlier, but he opened his mouth to ask for help. Just then, a blade flashed. 1,000 demonic tones. Boom. The demonic sound roared as the blade cut through everything. The bald golden core realm cultivator, who was initially surrounded by tentacles, looked in disbelief as the blade approached. He was even more surprised at the person who wielded that blade. He felt that he might as well devote his loyalty to this person. Jiang Hao grabbed the person's hand and pulled him out. Then, he swung the primordial heavenly blade. The intensity is approaching the golden core realm, Zheng Shijiu said wearily. There were simply too many tentacles, and they couldn't stop them all. Jiang Hao realized that if they continued, everyone else would undoubtedly die. He looked at the people around him and fell silent for a moment. Everyone was afraid that Jiang Hao would leave them there and go off alone. Evidently, their manager was very strong, and his sense of perception was exceptional. If he left, he could obviously survive. Others would have no way of escape. At that moment, they understood that Jiang Hao's choice would decide their life and their death. "You all go first," Jiang Hao said calmly. Everyone was incredulous to hear those words. In truth, Zheng Shijiu had already planned to tell Jiang Hao to escape while he could and that there was no need for him to take them along. However, Jiang Hao was telling them to escape first. It is no wonder the people in the sect doubt him of practicing the Bloodwish path because junior brother Jiang is always kind to others. Zheng Shijiu was shaken to his core. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.